Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yahya Revolution, and we got a World War III alert. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. You in the House of Revolution. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Yes, it's very dangerous times we in. The Zionists refuse to lose. They want to drag us all down with them. Benjamin Netanyahu, his home's been targeted. The United States is steady lying, saying North Koreans are in Ukraine. That's a damn lie. South Korea is demanding that North Koreans leave Ukraine. They're setting us up for the big one and trying to overlook what's going on in Brics with the Brics summit. But let's start off with this World War III alert.
Well, World War III could be coming at any moment. U.S. forces on full combat alert as we speak. Retired advisor to NATO three-star general says this, update, U.S. forces now are on combat alert. B-52 bombers are at Minot.
My brother Warren Webb for the donation to the war chest. Revolutionary way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, little bro.
Air Force Base, North Dakota, during war games today had a hot mic constantly transmitting on HF and talking about transferring fuel between tanks and the fuel systems currently being used in an alert setting as if they're going into nuclear war. Russian, Iranian warships conducting naval drills right now. Russian and Iranian warships conducting naval drills right now. And some of the drills that they're planning and working on are if they are on fire. If they are attacked and on fire, how would Russia respond to Iranian ships being caught on fire? Really? So Russia in these drills would come to the aid of Iran. Yes, war games playing out right now in the Indian Ocean as we speak. And a few minutes ago, sources in Iran telling all Iranian news agencies to sound the alarm and get on full combat alert. Now, Netanyahu says we will strike Iran's nuclear facilities. Iran then just issued an alert in response saying if they attack our nuclear facilities, we will destroy Israel's nuclear arsenal and facilities immediately. Now, nuclear war back and forth. We're going to hit your nuclear facilities. You hit our nuclear facilities.
Now, some very interesting stuff is taking place. 7 Israeli citizens were arrested for spying for Iran. Several of them was trying to find different locations on Benjamin Netanyahu so he can be targeted. Several of them helped target military bases in Israel. They don't want to report. They don't want to report on that in the U.S. 7 Israeli citizens arrested working for Iran. Iran has flexed its muscle and is showing that it has people deep in Israeli society. Now, when you think about that, think about the leak that just took place in the U.S. government reporting what Iran's strike was supposed to consist of. What Israel's strike was supposed to consist of on the Iranians. Somebody within the U.S. government just leaked that. Republicans is coming out yelling treason. They want people tried. They want people hanged. They want the death penalty. So when the Republicans did that, that made me think the leak was real. Salute, Queen. Salute. Roll up that good gentleman. That let me think the leak was real. And Iran has moles within these governments. And somebody is trying to stop World War III in these governments. And somebody is trying to stop the Zionists from blowing everything up.
And doesn't seem like anyone's trying to stop this. Oh, don't worry, though. They're sending friend of Israel, Anthony Blinken, to the region to try to ease concerns about this. They are actively trying to drag us into World War III. China, Iran, and Russia, they're trying to attack us all. They're trying to set us up to go to war with all of them all at once. This is the only way, of course, the deep state can retain power right now. This is the way that I see it. Right before an election, 14 days before an election, Israel announces.
Now, who would want us to go to war with China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba? Who would want that? We would think at times, the racist American imperialists, that's on the surface. You got to dig deeper. Who controls the money? See, those nations are free with those nations aren't in debt with the IMF. These are the last they got Libya. They want to get Syria. It's a handful of nations still not under the thumb of the small hats. That's what this shit is about. The small hats is taking the world to war over the monetary system. But Putin and the revolutionaries is not going for it.
Is through these leaked documents that, oh, by the way, yes, we're about to attack. We're going to carry out this massive attack right before the U.S. election.
And oh, by the way, we have nukes, which you've always known about, but pretended not to know about. But now you know about it. And now the world knows you know about it.
Right. So in these documents, exactly that, oh, we have nuclear weapons, that Israel has nuclear weapons. Whoops. We've known about that since the 1960s, but Israel has been lying to the world, telling us, no, we don't have nuclear weapons. And if you speak out about it, you go to prison, by the way. If you spill the beans on that, you go to prison. We're watching right now, I think, the largest confluence.
Revolutionary salute to our queen, Shannon G, for the donation to the War Chester super sticker. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, queen. Salute.
Of crises in world history all happening at once. And the last time, by the way, that this sort of confluence of crises all happening at once happened was right before World War II. And the timing couldn't be more ominous. 14 days before the election. I think we're about to be dragged into this world war. I think the Pentagon right now, again, I think they're half.
That's the only way we finna get some freedom. You see, the only way we're going to get some freedom is the people who are over us and keeping us in bondage is dealt with, and a new day come. Without that, see, that's why any house niggas, any shoe shiners who trying to sit here and keep this imperialist, racist, bigoted system going, they're only endangering our descendants. No, right now is the time. We're living in a time that freedom is near. And we gotta seize that opportunity.
Freaking out and half excited about it.
So they want to talk war. Go to war.
The half that's upset about it and I think freaking out about it leaked these documents. Leaked these documents to the press. And now the U.S. is probing where this intelligence leak came from. That we learn about these documents showing that Israel is about to attack Iran. Absolutely. Down to detailed plans about how exactly they're going to do that. And oh, by the way, the Israeli news media just about an hour ago or so confirmed, yes, the United States did know about this, that the leaked documents show U.S. intelligence on Israel's plan to attack Iran. The Israeli media saying that the White House, that the U.S. government did in fact leak this to the press. Of course they did. Of course the Pentagon leaked this.
They're like, we gave them to you. We told you. We of course.
See, I don't believe that the Pentagon just leaked these documents. I believe it's a mole in the U.S. government. It's mole in all governments that don't want us to go to war. But what coincides with my theory is 7 Israelis was just arrested this morning for working for Iran and targeting Benjamin Netanyahu. It's the same things is happening in the U.S. See, the U.S. not going to come out and arrest 7 people. No, they're just going to say, oh, it was a leak and then blame some military officials to save themselves for the humiliation that Iran got spies within their networks.
Of course we leak this. For 1 second think it's like an Edward Snowden noble hacker. Yes. No, they leak.
Redacted gonna come back later on and they're gonna be with me. I'm gonna show you why. Why the fuck would the U.S. government leak a document saying Israel has nukes? They would not tell the truth about Israel having nukes. They would never tell the truth about that. They will leak everything except Israel having nukes, because if it's on the record Israel have nukes, then we got to stop sending them money and certain it's our law. Undeclared nuclear state, we can't give you no money. You have circumvented our nuclear regime. That's true. So it's always we can't say Israel have nukes so we can send them money legally. Why the hell would the U.S. government leak a document proving Israel has? Then this is a document, it's proving it. Hell no, they trying to save face.
Leak this to the press on purpose. Now you have to ask yourself why. And the White House confirmed it, because the White House would have denied it almost immediately that these are fake. This is Russian propaganda. This is a fake hoax, whatever. But the Biden administration and President Biden said he's deeply troubled by all of this. Mm-hmm. He's deeply troubled by this leak. And they didn't deny it at all. And the Israeli media confirming it. So this is factual. These are factual documents.
Do you think that he's troubled by the leak or the content of said leak? Because I'm more troubled by the content, to be honest, that we're literally watching them prepare for nuclear warfare with Iran. And we're like, okay, cool. We didn't want to know about that. We needed to pretend that we needed plausible deniability. So What do you think? The content?
I mean, I think it's a charade because they knew what's in the documents and they're not concerned about the leak. Biden's out to lunch anyway, so who's really running the White House?
Right.
This was part of a plan. They leaked this to the media on purpose. They leaked it to, an Iranian-backed Telegram channel that then pushes it out. Now it's all over the media. It was all over the Sunday talk shows. And what, by the way, did the documents actually say?
But for what purpose? To get up?
The U.S. military ain't leaked this shit to no Iranian back nothing, nigga. Iranian back nothing. Come on, snap out of it, redacted. How much did they send you to say that bullshit? No, they not who they say they are. They got spot. The Arabs and the Muslims and the U.S. government is upset. They're pissed. They leaked it. They gave up their sensitive data and the sensitive information and exposed Israel and the U.S. schemes and exposed the U.S. hand in hand with the Israeli strikes. Ain't no U.S. military toll on themselves.
Get us to stand up and say, hey, we don't want this. Just let's stop. Let's not do that.
Well, we got to have to. I mean, let's throw this out to the audience. What do you guys think? Why would they? I mean, I have my own theories about this, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse here. And I don't want to lead. Like, how many metaphors can I mix here? I don't want to lead the witness.
I'm the expert on this.
Why would the Biden administration leak these documents, or someone at the Pentagon as part of the Biden administration leak these documents? And President Biden and Kamala Harris can, have plausible deniability, like they don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So we weren't involved in the leak. We don't know. Somebody at the Pentagon is worried that we are on the precipice of World War III. Maybe it's somebody at the Pentagon who's saying, by leaking these documents, we can actually stop this attack.
Right. Because again, the leak's not the story. It's happening. The media is pretending that the leak is the big story. It's not. It's kind of what's being leaked that's more concerning.
Yeah. And so this was that. So what was in the leak? The documents marked top secret and non-foreign, which means they cannot be shared with foreign allies. They were first shared on this pro-Iranian Telegram channel. One document was dated October 14th through the 16th. Was produced by the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the NGA, and details Israel's military preparations, including advanced munitions transfers and drone activity. And by the way, it also shows United States massive transport aircraft landing, taking off inside of Israel. So the United States is deeply involved in this. We just stationed 100 new Americans there as well to handle these preparations.
Wait. So we're supposed to believe that we had never seen this before, our own intelligence committee, but they had been planning for us to be involved in it. So they just kind of threw us in, like, hopefully grandma makes the mashed potatoes. That's part of the plan.
Yes.
But we haven't told grandma yet.
Right.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
And listen to how Speaker Mike Johnson was asked about this. He doesn't seem to have a problem with this at all. He seems fully involved on the other side of the Pentagon's piece of this, which is, let's go to war with Iran. Like, that sounds like a good idea for America right now to drag us into a war. Watch.
The U.S. is right now investigating a leak of highly classified intelligence documents posted online that appear to show Israeli plans for a retaliatory strike against Iran. What's the latest on the investigation into this leak, and what did your conversation with Netanyahu go like? How did that go?
Yeah, the leak is very concerning. There's some serious allegations being made there, investigation underway, and I'll get a briefing on that in a couple of hours. There's a classified level briefing and then other, but we're following it closely. Look, I talked to my friend Bibi, Prime Minister Netanyahu, yesterday to encourage him. I mean, he's done an extraordinary job, I think, prosecuting that war. And if he had taken Joe Biden's advice, they'd be in a much weaker position right now. I think that the United States needs to stand unequivocally by our ally there right now. There is really, we're on a precipice, I think, Jake, of a new era of security and freedom for Israel. And I think we're very close. I hope, I pray, to ending that conflict there, but we cannot equivocate. We can't appease Iran. Now is the time for a maximum pressure campaign against the head of the snake. It's not Hezbollah and Hamas and the proxies that are ultimately the threat. It is Iran itself.
Okay.
Okay.
My friend Bibi. I called my friend Bibi.
But we're close to ending this war, he says. Okay.
Yeah, how exactly?
Why? Because there's a ground invasion in Lebanon. More death than ever in Gaza.
Even beyond that. Literally just about an hour.
Yemen.
Literally just an hour ago, Israel announced that, oh, by the way, we discovered that underneath a hospital in southern Lebanon. There's massive infrastructure, and that's where they've been holding gold and cash. So we're about to bomb all these. We're about to bomb a hospital complex. Mm-hmm. So we're really pulling back on this whole war thing.
He really thinks it's winding down now. It's the tail end, like scene 3 in a movie.
It's like when I tell you, like, honey,
Act 3.
It's like when I tell you, like, you're like, honey, come to bed, and I'm like, I will. I just got a little bit more work to do.
Yeah.
And then it's like 2 hours later.
Right. Or we're not going to have any more chicken breasts for dinner, and then we have to keep coming. So anyway, we just had an argument about that before the show.
So Axios reports that the leak appears to be an attempt to disrupt this operation. Okay, so that's Axios' position here. So this leak, do you guys buy that? They leak these documents because that's going to stop us from going into World War III. Remember, Russia and Iran, China, all three of them are partners. So you're going to bomb the shit out of Iran, and you think that Russia and China are going to sit by? Oh, and by the way, President Putin today is meeting with the head of the UAE about ditching the United States dollar for settling oil transactions, and ahead of the Brics summit, of which Iran is a member, and Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. They're going to sit back and allow this to happen? That's why they're on high nuclear alert right now. And they're running war games exercises in the Indian Ocean, for crying out loud. Oh, and by the way, just over the weekend, you have Xi Jinping of China telling his troops to get ready for war with the West. Ready your troops, ready yourself for war. So, yeah, nothing to see here. 14 days before an election.
We got a super chat from Joel. Thank you so much. And we're going to address these later, who says that maybe it was to deter the attacks. The leak is maybe to deter it so that the international community, I'm extrapolating, can ring in and say, don't do this. We're not going to, this is not kosher. But it doesn't seem
that they're saying that. You just heard Speaker Johnson is like, yeah, let's do this.
He's not the international community, the rest of the world that doesn't want war.
Gotcha.
Right.
So I want to just put this quote up here from CNN. So the leak comes at an extremely sensitive moment in U.S.-Israeli relations and is bound to anger the Israelis, who have been prepping to strike Iran in response to Iran's missile barrage on October 1st. One of the documents also suggests something that Israel has always declined to confirm publicly, that the country has nuclear weapons. The document says the U.S. has not seen any indication that Israel plans to use a nuclear weapon against Iran.
Oh, no, not at all, really. I just remind you that they have a political prisoner right now, Mordecai Vanunu, who they imprisoned 3 times and will not let him leave for being a whistleblower about the nuclear programs. He literally cannot leave. No country will offer him asylum. They have a prisoner there. Cool. We didn't know that. That's, in the words of Phoebe from Friends, that is brand new information.
Dennis the Menace in the chat says, Clayton, in several years, your hair will be white. I think it's getting there already, like the stress of what's going on right now and sleepless nights right now. I mean, this is I think the most important moment in American history right now. And I don't say that lightly. The future of our country is at stake. You think about, well, what do you mean? Like the United States will cease to exist? No, the United States as a freedom-loving country, a democracy in the republic, however you want to phrase it, will cease to exist in the way that we appreciate it now. Total military control, martial law, control of our financial system by these globalists. Like, we are at a moment right now where, again, I've said I don't think the deep state will allow President Trump to become president of the United States once again. And so are we seeing this playing out? Is this the reason we're seeing this 14 days before the election? Mm-hmm. Is to try to somehow take control of our electorate in a way that gives them martial law powers over the United States? I don't know, but I do know that they're playing all sorts of fake news games right now. And so this was interesting over the weekend, that Iran had an earthquake, or is it a secret underground nuclear test? Now, 12 kilometers below the ground, they say.
Salute to our brother Out of Bondage for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, family. Salute.
A 4.4 magnitude earthquake shook Iran, and tremors were also felt in Tehran. And of course, the Western media is saying this was probably a nuclear test. Okay, now you'll recall about a week and a half ago here on the show, we had on a whistleblower who worked for Raytheon at the South Pole Station, at the earthquake center, where they actually can using directed energy, launch earthquakes around the world. And they've gotten so good at it, he described it as almost like using autopilot on an airplane. It's that good. So maybe this is another reason for them to say, oh, see, they had an earthquake, or it's because of a nuclear test.
Mhm.
We need to swoop in right now. Israel better bomb them because they're so close to having nuclear weapons.
Nope.
Better wipe them off the face of the earth like Lindsey Graham wants. Take us all into the dark ages.
Okay.
And they started with this back in August, by the way. Exclusive from Reuters, which is a mouthpiece of the CIA, by the way. If you ever read Reuters or you read any of these hacks, the Associated Press, these are extensions of the intelligence state. That's all they are. That they're mouthpieces of the CIA. That's
sometimes they tell the truth. And the truth was Iran absolutely did a nuclear test last week. That's just the truth. Yes, they want to use it to get more aggressive, but sometimes it's truth and a bunch of their nonsense. Now, that's not no myth. That's absolutely true. Too many credible people reported on that. Iran is ready for war. Iran said themselves, if Israel hit them with a nuclear weapon, they will give them the same response. So what the hell is that? What, they bluffing? No, they're not bluffing no more. They didn't already prove that. They done bluffing.
Reuters exclusive. Iran to deliver hundreds of ballistic missiles to Russia soon, intel sources say. Oh, so hundreds of ballistic missiles are being sent to Russia. There's another reason for us.
Now, that at one time I thought was propaganda, and that North Korea had sent some of the ballistic missiles. I thought that was propaganda. But what I'm now seeing is Ukraine is a battlefield for the testing of weaponry. See, Russia not just getting hundreds of ballistic missiles from the Iranians because they running out. Hell no, they're not running out. They got 10, 20 years worth of this shit ready for NATO. What they're doing is testing their allies' weaponry for the big war. They got to test, make sure the North Korea ain't got to test their ballistic missiles in no real war yet. Neither has Iran. They're doing it now with the help of Russia. But this is more for the U.S. to use to see like nefarious actions from Iran, nefarious actions from North Korea. And the big lie is that North Korean soldiers is in Ukraine. That's such a big lie. It's even crazy that they're saying it on TV, but it's to make people think Russia need help. They're losing. Russia is crippling. Ukraine is almost finished. They're on the last breath. You know, Zelensky can't even come up above ground. Everything he do is a green screen, you know, but they got to fool the people. But the problem with that is they're trying to fool the people into believing there's nothing else we can do but have nuclear war. And that's true. That's what they're saying.
For us to attack Iran and blow them up. And they'll spin it all over Fox News all day long about how Iran is Hamas, Iran is Hezbollah, so there's no daylight between them. And you know what? You as Americans should just want Americans to die in a bloody war, and you should want to attack them. That's what they want. That's all they want. And they want to spin these fake news stories to you. Well, it turns out our friends over at Moon of Alabama, which is one of the best websites out there, fake reports of missile transfers to Russia are used to sanction Iran. So again, as they point out, fake news reports have claimed, based on anonymous sources, that Iran has delivered ballistic missiles to Russia for use in the war in Ukraine. And he says, first, let's follow the trail. The first fake scare about Iranian missile transfer to Russia appeared in February, and Reuters back then was pushing this fake story. There's zero evidence that any missile transfer has happened. Iran strongly denies that that's happened. Ukraine has not reported the impact of any such missiles on its territory from Iranian missiles, and there's zero evidence at all that this has happened. Zero. But Reuters is telling us, and so therefore we better sanction Iran. And also we should probably bomb Iran too. Again, all of this happening is against the backdrop of Brics, which is the Brics summit unfolding. And so this morning we saw President Putin shaking hands with the United Arab Emirates delegation ahead of the summit to talk about basically ditching the United States dollar to settle oil transactions.
These people.
This whole
conference made a fool out of these people. The real boss is in Russia right now, sitting down with the big revolutionary himself, Putin, talking Turkey, talking a new day. And everybody know to get to this new day what have to happen. All these people ready for big war. And they already know as long as they're loyal to Putin, because they know he's a man of his word and he's going to do what he must do. And that's finish NATO and make sure Benjamin Netanyahu and the Zionists are put in their place. His existence, his nation depends on that. This was a humiliation. They said this man was sanctioned. They said Putin was isolated. Isolated. Those are the lies that they tell people. Putin's isolated. What? Who the hell do y'all think y'all fooling? Everybody who's anybody goes to sit with Putin and talk Turkey.
Conference over the next few days is all about U.S. dollar hegemony and getting rid of the U.S. dollar to settle transactions. President Putin has found a way. Like, we sanctioned the shit out of him.
Y'all better get y'all chickens in order. Get y'all financial situation ready. Quit depending on that dollar. That's serious business. Quit depending on that damn dollar, because that dollar is going to crash. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, 5, 10. You don't want your future tied to a crash, and the good days for that dollar is damn near over. We got to be thinking about our future. Our traffic and trading with the world. That's serious business. Because guess what? It's certain groups in America, they're already thinking like that. They're already, as a people, making their moves. We don't want to be stuck. Ass out. The little bit that we saved up, the banks telling you, well, that's no longer there. Or your wealth or whatever you have, your savings done got hit by half. Devaluation. You know, I better be understanding this is on the damn way.
We sanctioned the shit out of them. We brought the war to Russia. All you need to do is read Benjamin Abelo's great book, How the West Brought War to Ukraine, and to understand exactly how we agitated this in order to expand NATO right up to their doorstep. And they found a way through the Brics and this alternative currency backed by gold to basically give the massive middle finger. And this has all happened under the Biden administration's watch.
It's basically like they're defusing a bomb. You know, like they're getting rid of the weapon that we've used the most against them.
Right, the U.S. dollar. The cudgel of the U.S. dollar has been used for decades, since the Bretton Woods Agreement after World War II. And so now they have thrived under U.S. sanctions. They've built an alliance with China. They've gotten closer to China than ever before.
Giving us our goddamn reparations, what's owed to our people, what's owed to us. They done burned it, smoked it all away, blew it in the wind. They done gave the world our money. Now the world done turned their backs on their goddamn. That's all the hell with that. All of the dirty bribes we done gave throughout the goddamn world, thinking we was gonna buy everybody forever. They ain't never gave us no money. Why did they say, here's your reparations? Here's a bribe. Shut up. Here's a bribe. Leave us alone. Quit calling us racist. They give us our reparations. We won't be worried about y'all, but they don't give a damn. They don't want to help us. Now, this is real talk. There will be nothing to help you with. We keep talking about reparations. That's good. We need to say that. But we need to understand, it ain't gonna be, it look like it ain't gonna be nothing financial. Because it ain't gonna be worth shit. It's gonna have to be in land only, bro. I'm telling you, it's gonna have to be in land. These motherfuckers write you a check for $500,000, man. Shit, you heard that bitch gonna bounce.
Before. Oh, by the way, they've gotten closer to Iran than ever before, and they're ditching the U.S. dollar, and it's all happening, and it's miraculous, the timing of all of this suddenly. Now they want us to go to war with Iran at the very moment that the U.S. dollar is about to be destroyed. It's very interesting, the timing of all of this. And, you know, as I mentioned, Xi Jinping telling troops to focus on prepping for war at the same time. And then, of course, Kamala Harris being yanked off the campaign trail right now, 14 days before the election. They're scaling back her campaign. So something very big is happening. And I think you're seeing this confluence of all these crises right now, which is adding up to an absolute disaster. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below.
They got us fucked up, bro. They done sat here and blew our motherfucking future. And then gonna tell us freedom and democracy and all that. I know it is, nigga. If y'all don't give us our goddamn money, you best better believe all that shit on the line right here. You ain't got to worry about who coming to get you. We gonna deal with you right here. And that's serious business, man. We done sat back too long and watched them be the sugar daddies to the motherfucking world. Now we found out they got $33 trillion in the motherfucking hole. Never planned on paying nobody because they was the biggest dog on the block. Well, that's over. Nigga, you trillions of dollars in the hole of China. You think China ain't gonna get their money up out your ass? They own it all. See, China keep getting farms over here about military bases, all this shit. They report on it on the news to say how nefarious is this. You're like, why is the U.S. government doing this? Because there is debt to the Chinese. You ain't looking at them contracts. They talking shit on Fox News. Oh, we letting the Chinese. You ain't let the Chinese do shit. You broke bitch. You sold this shit. Give us our land.
To assassinate Prime Minister Netanyahu. But first this. A divisive presidential election is upon us, and the winner is gold. Let me tell you what I mean. Since 2016, our national debt has grown a staggering 70%, and gold has increased by 60%. Do you own gold? I do. I bought my gold in February 2023, and it has risen 33%. You've heard me talk about Lear Capital, the company I trust. Let me tell you why. Recently, Kevin DeMeritt, who is the founder and CEO of Lear, assisted the FBI in discovering a nationwide gold theft ring. And because of Kevin's good work, the FBI caught these people before they could steal anymore. That's why I have been saying the people at Lear are good people. They believe in America. They believe in their product, and they're honest to the core. So take action right now, my friends. Call 800-511-4620 or go to LearJudgeNap.com. Protect your savings and retirement before it's too late. 800-511-4620, LearJudgeNap.com. Remember, hope is not a strategy, but gold is. Scott Ritter, my dear friend, welcome to the program. Always a pleasure to be able to pick your brain. Thank you very much for your time. On Friday of last week, a drone apparently struck the house, may have gone in through the window of the house, a weekend home of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Was this a serious attempt to assassinate him or a message?
I think it was a message. It was a serious attempt. My understanding is there may have been up to 3 drones that had been dispatched on that. 2 of them were shot down. But again, we're going off of information that we don't know the source. You know, it could be a red flag. This could be whatever. But if the information's accurate, I think 3 drones were launched. 2 were shot down. 1 made it to the target. These weren't drones that were designed to deliver massive explosive blasts. I mean, if somebody had been on the receiving end, I think they probably would have killed them. But this just looks like it was sending a signal and a message that you know, we know what you did, killing Nasrallah, and you're on our list.
I want to play for you a clip from President Erdogan, who's expressing his condolences to the family of Sinwar, who, of course, was assassinated last week by the IDF. And then I will play you the American government's version of this. Cut number 3.
After my brother Ismail Haniyeh, the last elected prime minister of Palestine, I also pray to God to have mercy on Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, who was martyred recently. Today, I once again salute, with respect to all the leaders and members of the Palestinian resistance, who became legendary not only with exemplary struggle, but also with their martyrdom, and the heroes who watered the lands of Gaza with their blessed blood.
Now, the Biden administration version of this from Matt Miller at the State Department, cut number 2.
Hamas and other terrorist groups will try to present Sinwar as some kind of hero for the Palestinian cause. But I think it's important that everyone remember the actual facts, which is that Sinwar was a brutal terrorist that didn't just terrorize the Israeli people, but that ruled Gaza with an iron fist before.
Now, I want to remind people, and that's why it's so disgusting when the congressional black shoe shiners, the greatest shoe shiners of all fucking times, they keep a buff rag in their pocket so they can drop and give them racist bastards 50 buffs at any time in the halls of Congress. Why so disrespectful? What, when you saying a resistance, a freedom fighter on his own land is a terrorist, that's what they said to us. That's why they killed all our heroes and called them terrorists. Even the peaceful Dr. King was called a communist, treasonous traitor. That's serious business when he was alive. He didn't hear a kind word. All that bullshit you hearing now, that's in his death. When he was alive, he didn't know these people loved him. the way they screamed and yelled at him. He didn't know they had no love for him. They called him a treasonous terrorist. Even Nelson Mandela fighting back on his own land. Ronald Reagan, all the rest of these people called him a mad dog terrorist. Never forget that. Fred Hampton, they called him a terrorist. All of our Panther revolutionaries, terrorists. Let's not forget the days when we was in bondage. Oh, any uprising, terrorists who must be put down. That's in the newspapers. You can read what they called us. So it's just an updated version. Any other native freedom fighters was called terrorists. Geronimo, terrorist. Sitting Bull, terrorist. Running Wolf, terrorist. So when I hear them call Sinwar terrorists, it's disgusting to me. Because same old BS from these imperialist slavers and these colonial bastards.
Or October 7th, that brutalized Palestinians in Gaza, that tortured Palestinians in Gaza, and then unleashed a conflict that has been responsible for the death of more than 40,000 Palestinians. So I would hope that anyone that's considering thinking of him in any favorable light at all will look on the actual consequences of his life and the decisions that he made that wreaked such havoc for the Palestinian people.
That's why they got to pay.
Does this crackpot have any idea what he's talking about?
That's why they got to pay.
This guy wouldn't know heroism if it hit him in the face. I don't think he's ever done a heroic thing in his life. I don't think he's ever done anything that requires an ounce of courage. This is a man who stands up.
Killed our brother Fred Hampton after they spiked his drink so he couldn't fight back, and then called him a terrorist. I don't want to hear nothing these bastards got to say. That's why I say I'm so glad they're arrogant. Like in the biblical days, when the Most High had to harden the heart of Pharaoh, in the biblical days, as it says in the good book. See, sometimes the Most High got to harden the heart of these bastards. Why? So you get what's coming to you. Sometimes you got to face it, so your heart be hardened, and you won't fall on your knees and repent and do the right goddamn thing. I'm kind of glad. It's dangerous for us, and like I say, we got to survive. Some of us gonna make it, some of us won't. But that's the best option we got. It's the big war, and these bastards get what's coming to them.
Up and spews lies,
be all right.
Distorts truth, and that's his job, and that's what he's doing here. Look, there's the old saying, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So certainly from the perspective of the Israelis and the United States government, Sinwar was a terrorist. I have no problem with somebody calling him that. I won't disagree with it, but I understand why people would say that. But to question this man's courage.
And that go for C. Scott. At the end of the day, is an Anglo-Saxon, and his people wasn't called terrorists when they rose up. Any righteous revolutionaries have a problem when a fighter on his own land fighting back is called a terrorist. Because that let me know they would never give us a chance. Any armed resistance, oh, you a terrorist. And then we got it. No, hell no. Nobody fighting oppression is a terrorist, man. And like Dr. King said, America is the biggest purveyor of violence in the history of mankind. They never speak on that quote from Dr. King.
And dedication to the cause that he died for. When you introduced this, you said he was assassinated. No, he went down fighting. From what I understand, that he had been out in the streets for 18 days, leading his troops, going out there fighting. This is a man that the Israelis said was hiding in a tunnel, surrounded by hostages and his family, running.
That's unheard of. 63 years old. This nigga is the head of Hamas. He could have been deep underground. He had no business on the front line, except he was the real deal. He was a guerrilla fighter. If he would have lived to be 80, he would have been a guerrilla fighter. They did not expect him to be firing shots, throwing grenades, shooting at them. So when they talk about he's nothing heroic about him, they know damn well they lying. Because they can never show you none of their leaders who go out like that. You let one of their leaders go out like that, oh, Lord have mercy. They don't have to write a book and make some movies about this type of heroism. No. Sinwar wrote, he set the table for what the rest of those freedom fighters that call themselves leaders. See, the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, they're going to overthrow the leader. They overthrown in United Arab Emirates, in Kuwait, in Egypt. No more hiding out if you saying you a leader of your people, the people won't accept it. When Sinwar was fighting the Israeli military and he was fighting them on the front line, nigga. That's brave, right? I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, this is a man who was out in the streets leading his men in combat against the Israeli occupier. And in the end, he died. They got caught in a building, tank fire, missile fire, and they had sent in a drone, and he, his last. And you got to understand the injuries this guy had at the moment when that drone showed up. One arm blown off, one leg nearly blown off, the other arm mangled. His body's in shock, and yet he still picked up a stick and threw it at the drone in a final act of defiance before the Israelis came in and killed this man.
Now, remember, imagine he could have said, "I surrender." Imagine what Israel, if they would have caught him on camera, saying, "I surrender. I give up. I'm Sinwar, the leader of Hamas. I'll tell you everything." And they just blew his head off and then published that. That's what they wanted. Please, beggars, get on your knees and beg us for your life. Beggars, they couldn't get that. And so they had to kill him, but they released this video, which they regret, but they so bloodthirsty. They wanted to show people we killed them. Oh, we glad you showed us what a real revolutionary looked like on the front line, nigga. Thank you.
Remember, the man that they killed was gravely wounded. So, one might call that murder, as opposed to coming in and, taking him captive, which is something they could have done, but they didn't. They murdered him. But this man went down fighting. And
then they shot a tank shell in there because they too cowardly to go in there. And then they show pictures of them standing over the man, he in the rubble. That's so disrespectful. You didn't stand over him when he was alive. A real killer stand over a man. You couldn't. Sinwar wouldn't let them stand over him until he was dead and gone. And they was too fearful to stand. Why you didn't? We supposed to see the Israeli soldiers in that room right now, grabbing him, roughing him up, beating him while he alive. They cowards. The diaper
again,
force,
it's heroism. I recognize heroism wherever it occurs. Even in my enemies, you recognize that your enemies fight bravely, etc. Regardless of what you think of Sinwar, you have to acknowledge that he fought bravely until the end. And so to call him anything other than a man dedicated to his cause is absurd, especially coming from someone like Mr. Miller, who hasn't. Like I said, he wouldn't know heroism if it hit him in the face. I don't think he's done anything, any service to his country that would put him in a place where he could be heroic. So, that's my 10 cents on that.
What is the significance militarily or geopolitically, if any, to Sinwar's death?
Look, when you have somebody of significance, who has a personality that has taken hold. Even before his death, he was considered by many Palestinians to be legendary in terms of his resistance. This is a man whose biography is amazing. Remember, he was born in the camp. People tend to forget that. His parents lived in Ashkelon, right across in what is now Israel, but back then it was Palestine. His parents were evicted from their home as part of the 1948 Nakba, driven out along with 700,000 other Palestinians into an open-air prison camp where Sinwar was born. He is a child of the camps. He was raised in the camps as a prisoner. And this is a man who said, "We're not going to do this anymore." He was captured by the Israelis, and they put him in prison. But before he was captured, he ran the security service. Now, Miller criticized this, torture, brutal. Israel puts spies insinuate spies, and how they get those spies. For instance, the women spies. They'll arrest the women, they will rape the women, film it, and then say, "We will release this film to your family who will kill you and honor death unless you do what we want." So they blackmail. They take men in, they rape them homosexually, film it, put them out there and say, "We'll put this out." So they insinuate these people in there to spy on the Palestinians, to murder the Palestinians, to set them up to be killed and otherwise abused by the Israelis. And Sinwar came in and cleaned that up. Now you can question his tactics and all that stuff. It's a cruel world, etc. He cleaned it up. That's why the Israelis hate him. They arrested him. They put him in jail for 22 years. He wrote a book there while he was in prison. He learned about the Israelis, and he got freed in, I think, 2011 in a prisoner swap. And since then, he's been focused on creating a Palestinian home. You can say what you want about October 7th. It was a military assault against the Israelis that beat the Israelis like a sick little puppy on October 7th and 8th accomplished what it wanted to, was to draw the Israelis into Gaza so they could act like Israelis do, commit genocide, collective punishment. The whole world is turned against Israel. And for the first time ever, the concept of a Palestinian state is on everybody's lips. This is because of Sinwar. You may not like a Palestinian state, you may not, but this is what the man did. To call him a terrorist is absurd. He is a freedom fighter in the cause of Palestinian statehood. And if you don't judge your enemy correctly, you'll never defeat your enemy. As Sun Tzu said, you have to know the enemy like the back of your hand. Clearly, Matt Miller in the United States doesn't know their enemy, because if they're calling Sinwar a murderer, a thug, and something else, they're going to get whipped, because he was the leader of a Palestinian cause that now the whole world is starting to support. They live in a dream world if they don't think that what Sinwar started on October 7th resonates positively in the minds of many people around the world.
Is there a replacement from him who's likely to be just as tenacious and courageous and dedicated to the cause?
Absolutely. When you think about the Palestinian cause, Sinwar was one of millions of children of the camp. There are others like him out there with similar experiences. The cause is a just cause. It wasn't Sinwar's cause. It was the Palestinian cause. It is the Palestinian cause. And there are other Palestinians out there who possess just as much charisma, just as much courage, who will emerge as the leader. Hamas is not about one man. Hamas is an idea, an ideology. The Israelis have acknowledged this. There's some Israeli generals who say we'll never beat them because you can't defeat an ideology. And so the Hamas cause will produce leaders that will be every bit as capable of Sinwar. Sinwar, for some time now, has been saying he's a dead man walking. He's waiting for the Israelis to kill him. He knew what his fate would be. You can't rise to this level, get this much of a profile, and live when the Israelis put the target on you. But killing one man does not eliminate a cause that resonates in the hearts of millions.
Talk to us, please, Scott, about these two documents that were released on Telegram. They have all the earmarks of being official American top secret documents. Larry Johnson is convinced they were released officially, that is, by somebody who legitimately had the documents in their hand. This is not the result of any kind of hacking, that they couldn't have been hacked. What are your views?
Well, I can't speak to the origin, meaning hacked or not. They look like real documents. I mean, the way they're structured, the code words, the way they're laid out, this looks like a U.S. government document. What's interesting, it looks like a U.S. government document that the Israelis aren't aware of. We're monitoring the Israelis. So this is a document that's produced within American circles to advise American leaders about what Israel's doing, because Israel's not talking to us about what they're doing. A couple interesting things out there. They're talking about specific weapons types, munition types, which would give the Iranians invaluable intelligence on how the Israelis plan to attack. If you know the weapon, you know the range of the weapon, you know the attack profile, so you know the aircraft, you can start doing range arcs out there, finding out where they're going to be doing their refueling, where they're going to be launching their attack, and you do your patrols. This is devastating for the Israelis in terms of their attack. They talk about covert drones, again, giving away capabilities. They talk about nuclear weapons, which is interesting because the United States treats the Israeli nuclear weapons threat as if it's real, as opposed to the Israeli official policy of deliberate ambiguity. This is a devastating document for the Israelis. And I believe it was deliberately released because the United States does not want Israel to attack Iran. So this was an effort done by somebody in the U.S. government, with permission or without permission, to derail the Israeli attack against Iran. Whether they're successful or not, we'll find out.
Will this be a setback for the Israelis? Surely they're not going to carry forward with the plans articulated in the documents now that the whole world has seen the documents, are they?
As I said, it gives away. It's not a specific attack plan, so there's no specifics of which aircraft, how many aircraft, what the exact release points are. The Israelis would have to go back and take a look and maybe extend the range of the airplanes to get them out of predictable launch points, either release from a longer range or coming closer. they'll take a look at their munitions mix to see if there's anything more. But the interesting thing is that it gives specific numbers of weapons systems, which tells the Iranians about targets, and then they can prioritize. So if you know the Israelis are going to hit, they have 60 weapon systems, that's 60 targets. It just gives the Iranians a lot to go on when it comes time to plan, or try to predict what the Israelis are going to do. It doesn't prevent an Israeli attack; it complicates an Israeli attack, and I'm sure that they're furious about to the United States about this. But tough luck. I mean, I think this is a signal to Israel that you're not America, you're not one of us, you're not part of our team, especially when you behave in a manner that is detrimental to our strategic posture in the world today. An Israeli attack against Iran would be devastating for the United States economically and for the Biden administration politically, because it would get us involved in a regional war, less than 20 days out of an election where, Biden's candidate of choice, Harris, is being opposed by Donald Trump, who says, I'm not going to get us into a war. I mean, what makes Donald Trump's message resonate greater than getting into a war that doesn't need to be gotten into? So I think this will help the United States put pressure on Iran, on Israel, and we'll see. But Netanyahu, he's acting not in the interest of Israel, but in his own personal political interests. And so, trying to get in the head of Netanyahu's mission impossible.
If you don't mind, let me ask you a couple technical questions, and then I want to ask you to comment on what others have told me. So my understanding from you is this is not a document that was produced by what Mossad revealed to CIA. This is a document produced by what CIA learned by surveilling Mossad and IDF. Is that correct?
Based on the classification level, top secret, and then there were some things in there that I'm really not allowed to comment on. In the public, but I'm not going to mention it. That is based upon surveillance. That's not based upon liaison activity.
So some of this was shared with the 4 remaining members of the Five Eyes: Great Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Some of it was labeled no foreign person can look at it, including the Five Eyes. Now,
correct.
Do the Five Eyes know that the United States doesn't share everything with them and sometimes keeps information strategically from them?
Absolutely. Look, during the Gulf War, I went to we called it the Gypsy, but it was the Joint Imagery Processing Center, where all the imagery comes in. And when you walk in, you have one level where you had your Canadians, your British, I don't think we had anybody else. Maybe the Australians had somebody in there, but that's where the Five Eyes were. But then you had the inner sanctum, which was American only, because there were systems that we had out there that we don't share with anybody but ourselves. And so, and the other thing about no foreign is it's basically about protecting a source of information. For instance, if you notice, there was something that said released Great Britain. So we may have received intelligence, because the British are doing a heck of a lot of monitoring out of Cyprus. They're doing stuff out there, and the British may have given us intel. And the British have their own little, protected sources. And if the British shared it with us on the understanding that only the United States could have it, then that would become no foreign dissemination of this specific intelligence.
Do the IDF and Mossad know that CIA, DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, and MI6 spy on them, even though we are supposedly lowercase a allies?
Of course they know, and they do things. For instance, if they want us to know things, but they can't officially give it to us, they will do things in a manner which makes it conducive to collection. So they're sending a signal, hey, this is what we're doing. But they also are very clever. If they know what we're monitoring and they don't want us to be catching on, they'll do deception. And so they will put things out. And that's one of the things I have to point out here, is that we don't know if what was detected as part of an Israeli deception plan against the against the United States to put out certain capabilities. Maybe the Israelis were testing, put things out there to see if there would be a leak. The Israelis know that we leak like crazy. So these documents, even though they're real, there's a whole bunch of reasons why, rather than just jumping and saying this is, the 10 Commandments coming down from Moses, to take a pause and say, how did these documents get produced? Why did these documents get produced? How did the intelligence come about? I'd have a whole bunch of counterintelligence guys going through Israeli past practice, looking at patterns of behavior to make sure that they're not deceiving us by doing something, knowing that we're collecting it to try and get our analysts and our policymakers moving in this direction, and then they do something else.
So your friends and colleagues on this show have the following views. Alistair Crook says, quite simply, this was released by somebody who wants to prevent World War III. Ray McGovern says it was released by an Edward Snowden whistleblower type, and he hopes that the person is on his way to Moscow. Larry Johnson is of the view that it was an official release by somebody who legitimately had this in their hands and who represents a segment of the United States government that does not want the U.S. participating in a war against Iran. Where are you, if anywhere, in this spectrum?
I don't think it's a Snowden type person. First, Snowden came out with everything, so this is a very targeted leak of information. The thing about having an official government person do it, and again, I don't want to get into too much in this, but when documents are produced at that level, there are things in the document that will indicate who had them, etc. That's the way it used to work. My understanding still works that way. So there will be something about that document that where the computer has done something so that when you see the document out there, you'll say, okay, this document was released to, this version of the document was released to the following people, and aids in any investigation of that. So if this person did that, then there would have to be they would have had to have produced a clean document or something of that nature or something, because it's going to be investigated. This is if an official person is going to do this, you don't release those documents. First of all, you're doing damage to the United States. Those documents give away sources and methods. They damage intelligence relationships. It's a really bad document to give away. You can give a briefing to the Wall Street Journal or to the Washington Post or the New York Times where you release that same information, but you don't package it in a way that does damage. So I believe that this is a person that wants to stop the war, and they acted on their own volition. And I think this is a person that will probably be discovered and will be arrested and charged with violating the law, because that's what this is. It's a violation of law. I know why they did it. And I can't say that I'm against them doing it, but as a former intelligence person, releasing that document did a lot of damage, a whole bunch of damage that goes beyond simply trying to stop Israel from, it gives away monitoring capabilities. The Israelis will be able to reverse engineer that, figure out exactly what we can do. Overhead, I don't want to, again, it just gives away capabilities that are highly protected and should never be given away. There's a better way to release this information than releasing the documents, which tells me this was more of an amateur effort to stop a war as opposed to something official.
Are the Israelis preparing to attack Iran in a substantial way?
There's no doubt about it. The Israeli military, like any military, prepares certain capabilities. During the Gulf War, Israel was actively preparing to send in multiple brigades of combat forces into Western Iraq, backed up by helicopters and military aircraft. They had a plan ready. They had the troops ready, but they never executed that plan because of the political pressure put on them by the United States. But the Israeli military was ready to do that. There's no doubt in my mind that the Israeli military is ready to attack Iran once the order is given. That's their job. Their job isn't to get political. At least not the people who are planning. The political guys are the ones who are telling the boss, hey, when you do this, things are going to happen. We can't defend. It's going to be a mess. You may not want to do this. But when they're told to prepare to do something, they have to do this. So there's no doubt in my mind that the Israelis have prepared several options. Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. Mr. Prime Minister, these are the options we have to execute the operation that you've told us to get ready to do.
Do you think that the United States of America is ready to, I got to strike that, the Biden administration is ready to back up this invasion of Iran irrespective of the natural and probable consequences to the United States of such a maneuver by us?
No. I don't know what they're going to do if Israel attacks. But I have a feeling that the United States, we're going to do everything we can to tell the Iranians we had nothing to do with this. Because if our fingerprints are on this, understand that it is the death sentence for thousands of Americans.
And I already said they don't want to hit.
They're very vulnerable right now in the region. They're in bases that can't be protected from Iranian missiles, and the Iranian missiles will hit them. And this time it'll be done in a way that is designed to generate casualties. And depending on how this attack is done, overflight of Saudi airspace, things of that nature, and depending on what target mix is gone after, this could, basically disrupt Middle East oil production, and that's the end of the economy. And Biden again understands this. When he says he doesn't want Donald Trump elected, I think he means it. This isn't just, but he personally believes that Trump is going to be bad for America. And so why would you then throw away the election? If you personally believe that, if Iran is attacked by Israel, it will very much seal the fate of Kamala Harris in this election. It'll be over, done. I mean, she's not doing too well right now anyways, but this will be America going to war. She's the vice president. She'll be blamed. This will be the economy going to hell. She's the vice president. She'll be blamed. I think Biden will also, he can't let the Israelis think that they can do things that will harm America and get away with it. So I think that we're looking at, the real potential of consequences if Israel goes through with this attack. We're not going to be a part of it.
But doesn't Netanyahu believe that he can do whatever he wants and the United States will continue to give him whatever he asks for?
I think Netanyahu is getting briefings from people. Some of them are saying what I'm saying. Others are saying the opposite. The United States can't afford not to back Israel. That politically, the cost of not backing Israel will be far worse than the cost of the cost of failing to back Israel is far greater than the cost of the other. So he also, remember, Netanyahu is a man who's worked in the United States, educated in the United States, speaks perfect American accented English, and he thinks he's his own expert. He thinks he knows America better. And listen to what he says. He has very little regard for us. He says that we're Israeli puppets, that he's bought us, that he owns us, that they bought all the Congress will do. And he believes this. He believes that Congress in the end will do what Israel wants them to do, because Israel's invested literally hundreds of millions of dollars into buying this Congress. He believes that the pro-Israeli lobby has such an iron grip on the American mass media that it'll be impossible to generate, extensive negative press about Israel. So, this is a man who has his belief set, and he will do what he believes. Now, one would, and again, this doesn't come down to U.S.-Israeli relations. This comes down to Benjamin Netanyahu's ability to stay in power and avoid being evicted from office, arrested, put on trial for corruption, and spend the rest of his life in jail. That's what we're really talking about here. And he's willing to sacrifice everything to keep that eventuality, keep that possibility from becoming an eventuality.
Is the resistance in the Middle East finally united as a result of all of Netanyahu's decisions and all of the IDF's slaughters?
The axis of resistance.
Netanyahu and Zelensky in the same boat, and they the same type of individuals too, small hats. If NATO and the world do not negotiate their peaceful exile to somewhere in Florida or somewhere in Britain or something like that, then they're going to take the whole world down. Zelensky just threatened NATO. If they don't let him in NATO, then he going to have to get nuclear weapons the other day. All the Americans was pissed. NATO was pissed. They didn't want him talking like that in the open. Putin loved it. Oh, please keep talking about nukes so we can finish you off quicker. But I said this months ago, if they don't negotiate with Netanyahu, he don't have no option except to start World War III, because without that, he going to jail.
Since has always been united. They've been doing escalation management that frustrates some people, and they misread that to say they're not really behind the Palestinian cause, they're not willing to go all the way. But remember, if this war blows up between Israel and Iran, we won't be talking about Palestine anymore. We'll be talking about global energy crisis. We'll be talking about, the potential of nuclear conflict. We'll be talking about a whole bunch of other things that isn't talking about the creation of a Palestinian state. So the resistance has always been united in the creation of a Palestinian state. And the way you keep the focus that has now been put on that away on that problem is to avoid creating bigger problems. So the resistance is there. The Arab world, though, isn't the resistance. The resistance is Iranian-led. There's a handful of actors in there, but the rest of the Arab world, they're not on the side of the Palestinians. And I think sometimes people lose sight of that. That the Saudis were celebrating Sinwar's death. The Saudis are not in favor of a Palestinian state. The Jordanians aren't in favor. The Egyptians aren't in favor. None of the Gulf Arab nations are in favor of this. So when we speak of resistance and solidifying, remember that it's only the Iranian-led resistance. The rest of the Arab world is not on the side of Palestine.
If Israel attacks Iran and the United States aids Israel, what is the man in the Kremlin thinking?
I think we're seeing the Russians have been, on the sidelines, trying to work this out diplomatically. But as Lavrov said, and then Putin has implied, Russia's not going to be on the sidelines forever. That at some point in time, Israel's crimes against humanity rise to the level where Russia will, become directly involved. And we're starting to see that this relationship with Iran, providing Iran with weapons, the diplomatic backing. Russia won't support an attack, will condemn an attack. I think Russia's not going to go to war for Iran. This isn't that kind of alliance. But Russia and Iran are strategically aligned, and this is very important for both. When we speak of the economics, there's a corridor, a north-south corridor, starting in St. Petersburg that runs to the Iranian port of Chabahar. That is very important for the Russians from a global geopolitical perspective, and they want to preserve that. So I think you're going to see Putin and the Russians becoming far more involved in in this, and they're not going to be neutral. They're going to be involved on the side of Iran and the Palestinians.
But will they be involved militarily by supplying weaponry or troops?
Well, they are providing weaponry. The question of troops is a tough one. If you go back in history, you'll see, for instance, in the Korean War, there were Russian pilots, Soviet pilots flying in the Korean Air Force. During the Vietnam War, Russians were manning the air defense systems.
Just like America's advanced weapon systems, Putin called out that if those advanced weapon systems was in Ukraine, Americans would have to work them. If German weapon systems, the advanced ones, was in Ukraine, Germans would have to work them. British, France, and such. Same thing. Same thing with Russia. When Russia sends its advanced air defense systems and advanced planes that it sent to Iran, Iranians don't know how to use those things. Those are Russians are going to be actively in Iran using them against the U.S. or Israel or whoever else attacked Iran. They're already in Iran.
The Yom Kippur War and in the War of Attrition leading up to that, there were Russian pilots manning the Egyptian MiGs. If Iran wants to incorporate, let's say Russia provides Su-35 fighters, advanced generation 4 plus fighters. If Russia provides these fighters, the Iranian pilots aren't up to speed. It takes 6 months to a year to transition into a new airframe, especially one that's of that complexity. So there's every reason to believe that Russia might be providing pilots during this interim period to make that aircraft combat capable and ready to use. Now, and the same thing applies with the S-400 surface-to-air missile that Russia has provided to Iran. Unless Iranian crews were in Russia training on the S-400 and ready to fall in on that system, Russia would have to provide, at a minimum, technical advisors on the ground, working the radar, working the system, making sure it's done right. So Russian forces could be in harm's way in any Israeli attack against Iran.
Scott Ritter, thank you, my dear friend. I wanted to talk to you about Ukraine, but I've had you on.
Recently, there have been several reports regarding Iran's defense capabilities in the event of a potential attack by Israel, particularly after Iran's ballistic missile strikes on Israel in early October. However, it has been challenging to find detailed and verified information about these developments. New reports have emerged about unprecedented military exchanges between Iran and Russia, including Iran's acquisition of technology to track the F-35 fighter jet. Before delving into these specifics, it's important to first examine the broader context of military collaboration between Russia and Iran since the end of the Cold War. Make sure to watch the entire video. In the 1990s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia began to significantly support Iran's military infrastructure and nuclear energy development. This relationship was primarily driven by both economic and strategic interests, as Russia sought to expand its influence in the Middle East and bolster its arms exports, while Iran, recovering from the Iran-Iraq War, needed military hardware and nuclear technology. One of the most critical developments was Russia's assistance in Iran's nuclear energy program. In 1995, Russia and Iran signed a deal to complete the construction of the Bushehr nuclear reactor, a project that had been abandoned by Germany during the Iran-Iraq War. This marked a significant turning point in Iran's nuclear ambitions, as Russian engineers and technology played a crucial role in reviving the program. Although this cooperation faced international pressure, particularly from the United States, it proceeded with Bushehr becoming operational in 2011. Russia also suggested allowing Iran to enrich uranium in Russia, rather than on Iranian soil, to address concerns over potential weapons development. In addition to nuclear support, Russia supplied Iran with advanced military hardware, including the S-300 air defense system. Talks about the sale began as early as the late 1990s, with a contract signed in the mid-2000s. The S-300 system, designed to protect Iran against aerial attacks, was crucial for Iran's defense posture, especially in light of potential threats from the United States or Israel. While deliveries were delayed due to international sanctions, Russia resumed the deal in the 2010s, signaling its willingness to challenge global opposition. The military partnership between Iran and Russia reached a critical stage during the Syrian civil war, significantly altering the course of the conflict. In 2015, Russia launched a military intervention to support the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, joining forces with Iran, which had been involved in the war since its early stages. This marked a turning point in the war, as Russia provided vital air support while Iran, through the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and affiliated militias, supplied ground troops. Iran had already invested heavily in supporting Assad by deploying forces and backing local militias. Its forces played decisive roles in key battles, such as those in Aleppo and Deir ez-Zor, while Russia's air power enabled the Syrian army to regain territory from opposition forces. The Russian-Iranian alliance helped stabilize Assad's position when his regime was near collapse, enabling him to recapture significant portions of Syria. Let's take a quick pause. Could you do us a favor? If you enjoy our content, please hit the like button. To help even more, leave your thoughts and feedback in the comments. Your engagement helps us grow. Thank you. Since 2022, the military collaboration between Russia and Iran has significantly deepened, driven by Russia's need for military supplies for its war in Ukraine. Iran has provided Russia with critical military assets, including drones such as the Shahed 136 and Mohajer 6. These drones, used extensively in Ukraine, have become a central element of Russia's aerial campaign, with over 2,000 Shahed 136s launched against Ukrainian targets. These unmanned systems, while relatively inexpensive for Iran to produce, have imposed a heavy toll on Ukraine's air defenses. In exchange for this support, Russia has agreed to supply Iran with advanced weaponry, including Su-35 fighter jets and Mi-28 attack helicopters. Iran has also reportedly sent Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missiles to Russia, further intensifying.
Those Shahed drones changed the game at the beginning of the Ukraine war. Those drones were cheaply produced for $20,000 or so and were destroying multi-million-dollar tanks and multi-million-dollar air defense systems. And I said, because we witnessed those drones, these are Iranian drones. Now, Russia got them and upgraded them a little bit, but they devastated all of NATO's equipment in Ukraine. How is it possible that they thought that they was going to be able to stop Iran from devastating Israel? Iran is a drone superpower world, and they've already won. They can send thousands of drones, and drones are harder to defend. This is a new era of war. NATO was not prepared for a drone war, and they proved that they got to. Now they have to get up on their drone capability, where they're far, far behind in that. They behind Iran.
Their military cooperation. These exchanges represent a new level of military partnership, with Iran not only enhancing Russia's war efforts but also strengthening its own military capabilities through the acquisition of Russian technology. This collaboration has reshaped the geopolitical dynamics of the conflict, with both nations leveraging their strategic ties to challenge Western influence and bolster their military capacities. Following the imposition of Western sanctions and the United Nations arms embargo on Iran ending in 2023, Iran has legally increased its arms exports to Russia. The war in Ukraine has also opened doors for Iran to leverage its position, with Russia even considering cooperation on Iran's missile and space programs. The growing defense cooperation extends beyond arms sales and into strategic areas like satellite launches and potential joint military exercises. Both nations appear to be aligning more closely against common adversaries, particularly the United States and its allies in the Middle East. As Israel's retaliatory actions against Iran escalate, the importance of robust anti-ballistic missile capabilities and defense systems has become more critical than ever. Recently, a Russian news agency reported that Russia has already supplied Iran with its advanced anti-aircraft radar technology, further enhancing Iran's military defense infrastructure. According to a report by TASS, Iranian forces successfully used Russian-made Resonance-NE radar systems to detect and track U.S. F-35 fighter jets during heightened tensions in early 2020, shortly after the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. The radar, which was designed to detect stealth aircraft and hypersonic targets, had been operational in Iran for several years, providing round-the-clock coverage. Alexander.
Now that particular radar is one that Putin talked about during the Syrian war, when he stepped in to save the Christians because of Obama and I can't believe Trump. They was allowing ISIS and Al-Qaeda to behead Christians, wreck ancient Christian civilizations all throughout the Middle East. Well, anyway, they tried to lie and say Syria did a chemical weapons attack on Al-Qaeda. That's disgusting. And they were threatening to attack Syria. And Putin had already had his army there, and Putin came out and told him, I'll never forget that, he told them that he wasn't playing with them and that they need to understand they was bragging about the F-35. They, because they like to promote they crap weapons so they can force people to buy it. And Putin came out and said, I will show the world that there is no such thing as an invisible plane. You're scamming people. And he was particularly talking about the F-35. And that if you try to use the F-35 on them, they're going to shoot it down and expose your whole hand and break up your military industrial complex. No such thing as an invisible plane.
Anders Stuchilin, deputy CEO of the Resonance Research Center, confirmed that the radar identified and tracked U.S. F-35 jets near Iran's borders during this period of escalated tension. The Resonance-NE radar system is a Russian-made over-the-horizon (OTH) radar designed to detect and track stealth aircraft, ballistic missiles, and hypersonic targets. It operates in the very high-frequency (VHF) band. which makes it more effective at detecting low observable stealth targets like the F-35 fighter jet, as stealth technology is typically optimized to evade higher frequency radars. The Resonance NE is specifically noted for its ability to track stealth aircraft. Its use of long wavelength VHF frequencies allows it to detect aircraft that would be difficult to track with higher frequency radar systems. It has a detection range of up to 1,100 kilometers, 683 miles, for aircraft, and 600 kilometers, 373 miles, for ballistic missiles, making it suitable for monitoring wide airspace and long-range threats. The Resonance NE employs over-the-horizon radar technology, which allows it to detect targets beyond the line of sight by bouncing signals off the ionosphere. This extends its coverage range and improves its ability to track targets at lower altitudes. In addition to detecting stealth aircraft, the system is capable of tracking ballistic and cruise missiles, hypersonic weapons, and other airborne threats, making it a versatile element of air defense. The Resonance NE can be integrated into broader air defense systems, providing early warning and target acquisition for anti-aircraft and missile defense systems. The F-35 Lightning II is a highly advanced fifth-generation multi-role fighter designed to excel in air combat, ground attack, and intelligence missions. One of its defining features is its stealth technology, which minimizes its radar cross-section, making it difficult to detect by conventional radar systems. This stealth capability, combined with radar-absorbent materials and electronic countermeasures, allows the F-35 to operate in highly contested environments with reduced risk of detection. The aircraft is also equipped with the AN/APG-81 ESA, or Active Electronically Scanned Array radar, providing exceptional tracking, targeting, and situational awareness, while sensor fusion technology integrates multiple data sources to give pilots a complete picture of the battlefield. Several countries have developed radar systems designed to detect and track stealth aircraft like the F-35, which presents significant challenges due to its advanced stealth technology. Russia has been a leader in this area, creating systems like the Nebo-M and Resonance N radars. These operate across multiple frequency bands, including VHF, which is more effective at detecting stealth aircraft. Russia's highly advanced S-400 and S-500 air defense systems also incorporate AESA radar technology, giving them enhanced capabilities to track low observable targets like the F-35. China has also made considerable progress in this field. Systems such as the JY-26 Skywatch UHF radar have been specifically designed for stealth detection, with claims that they can track planes like the F-35 from long distances. Additionally, China's over-the-horizon, or OTH, radar systems aim to detect aircraft using signal reflection off the Earth's ionosphere, providing extended range capabilities. Iran, while not as advanced as Russia or China, has been developing radar systems such as the Ghadir radar, which is claimed to be capable of detecting stealth aircraft at long distances using VHF frequencies. In summary, it appears that Iran has been steadily expanding its defense capabilities over recent years, positioning itself for the current escalation. However, the situation remains fluid, and we will have to wait and see how events unfold and what consequences arise. Hopefully, further conflict can be avoided and peace will prevail, allowing stability to return to the region and beyond. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching this video.
Revolutionary salute to our family. Seaweeds for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. I absolutely appreciate the love, family. Salute to you.
Than ever to push for a de-escalation.
You know, some of what's been happening on the diplomatic front more broadly between Iran, countries in the Gulf Cooperation Council, how that fits into everything happening in West Asia now. We are very, very honored to be joined once again here by Giorgio Cafaro, who is the CEO of Gulf State Analytics. Giorgio, as always, thanks so much for being with us.
Good to be with you guys.
Well, great to have you here to sort through all of this. And I guess the first question I want to ask you is, you know, we've seen a lot of Iranian sort of diplomacy in the sense people, I'm sure, have seen the foreign minister flying around to different countries. And I wonder, you know, what you think their overall strategy is in approaching many of these Gulf states with the sort of Damocles sword of the Israeli response to their missile attacks happening, and how are you viewing the response we've seen from some of the GCC countries that they've been engaging with?
Yeah, good question. So obviously on the 1st of this month, we had the two-way ballistic missile attack that Iran carried out against Israel. And for the past 16 days, the Iranians have been preparing for the expected Israeli retaliation. And Iran has sort of been responding to these circumstances and these threats in sort of a multidimensional way. On one hand, there are these concerns that Iran has about some Arab states potentially assisting the U.S. and/or Israel in what might be a military operation that targets the Iranian homeland or Iranian interests throughout the region. When it comes to the GCC states, the two main concerns in this respect would be that some of the Gulf states permit the Israeli fighter jets to use their airspace, or that some U.S. military bases in the Gulf could be used for such an operation. So the Iranians have been very clear to the 6 GCC states that if there is any sort of cooperation between them and the U.S.-Israeli alliance against Iran in some upcoming attack, that Iran will make them pay a very, very high price. And the Iranians in the past, as we know, we discussed on the show before, back in September 2019, there was the huge attack on the Saudi Aramco facilities. So everyone in the Gulf remembers that episode. Everyone in the GCC knows how easy it would be for Iran and its allies to target the energy infrastructure of the GCC countries. Their economies are totally dependent on oil and gas. So the Iranians know where the GCC states are vulnerable. They've made it very clear that any cooperation between the GCC country and Israel or the US in such an act of retaliation would come with serious consequences. But at the same time, in recent years, we've seen even the most anti-Iranian members of the GCC, chiefly Saudi Arabia, make huge progress in terms of improving and warming their relations with Iran. So at the same time, the Iranian message to Saudi Arabia and others in the GCC is that if you respect our interests, we will also respect your interests. And we are very interested in continuing to improve our relations. But that obviously requires not doing anything to assist the Americans or Israelis in some sort of a military operation against Iran. And in sort of a grander context too, I think Iran is trying now more than ever to push for a de-escalation of the conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon. And in that context, we saw the Iranian foreign minister visit Oman, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. So 6 Arab states this month. And I think this is about sort of rallying more regional support in favor of ceasefire both in Gaza and Lebanon. The Iranians definitely do not want these conflicts to continue and to further regionalize and internationalize for Iran's own interests.
I mean, definitely, I think a lot of people have their eye on the GCC states and have for this entire year. And there's been a lot of outrage and anger that they haven't done more, and questions of, okay, they have all this oil, why haven't they leveraged it? They have these US bases that they host, why haven't they leveraged their willingness to host them? So why do you think the GCC states have been so reluctant to use their leverage to basically get the US to rein in the Israelis? And then maybe I should be asking the question is, do they even have the leverage that we think they do?
Well, the GCC states have different perspectives on questions about Israeli normalization. The different members of the GCC have different perspectives on groups in the axis of resistance. For example, Qatar and UAE have very different perspectives on Hamas. So they obviously have their own unique interests, but what they all have in common is a whole host of concerns about what will happen to the region if the conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon continue, not only in Gaza and Lebanon, but if they further regionalize to the Red Sea, Yemen, elsewhere in the Middle East. So they have been very frustrated with the United States for not using its leverage over Israel to sort of pull the plug on the Netanyahu government and get these conflicts to wind down. This is a huge source of frustration among all of the Arab states in the Gulf, and it is changing the ways in which they look at U.S. leadership on the international stage. The issue, though, getting to your question, is that they don't have the leverage to either rein in the United States or Israel, and they find themselves rather vulnerable to these dynamics. At the same time, all 6 GCC members, at the end of the day, do rely on the United States as their security guarantor, and therefore, like I said, there's a real limit as to how much influence they have, but they nonetheless remain very vulnerable to these intensifying conflict dynamics in the region.
You know, I'm glad you raised the point about, you know, the U.S. being sort of the bottom line security guarantor. And I guess it just makes me wonder, it's picking up on a theme you raised earlier, the Saudi-Iran rapprochement that's been developing over time, that China has been developing is, I mean, how real is that? Do you think the momentum towards that is moving closer? And is perhaps the desire to be less dependent on others outside the region in terms of security something behind the Saudi desire to sort of bridge this gap?
You know, the fact that over a year has gone by since October 7th, 2023, and the Saudi-Iran detente is still on track really underscores the extent to which both Riyadh and Tehran have vested interests in maintaining this better relationship. Obviously, there's still a tremendous amount of distrust between the Saudi and Iranian governments, but they both, even if for different reasons, they both have an interest in preventing the relationship from being hostile. The Iranians, for their part, sort of accept that the US sanctions, the European sanctions, are probably going to remain in place for a long time. So to counter the effects of Western pressure, Tehran has really invested in this foreign policy strategy called Neighbors First, which entails improving ties with all of Iran's neighbors, including Saudi Arabia and other Arab states in the neighborhood. Saudi Arabia is really focused on its own economic development and diversification at home, and of course conflicts that involve Iran and potential Iranian-backed operations against Saudi Arabia can undermine the Saudi leadership's vision for developing the kingdom. So for these reasons, they want to maintain the normalization of relations and really mitigate and control the tensions. It was really remarkable. 2 days after the ballistic missile attack that Iran carried out against Israel, the Iranian president and Saudi foreign minister met in Doha, and the Saudi official made it very clear. In his own words, he basically said, we want to take the remaining issues of tension between our two countries and resolve them and start a new chapter based on brotherly relations. What I think we need to sort of take away from the past 19 months, 20 months or so of detente is that the Saudis realized that the US pressure on Iran was not making the kingdom any more secure, and that ultimately for Saudi Arabia to feel more secure in relation to what Riyadh perceives as the Iranian threat, you get there through dialogue and cooperation and diplomacy, not pressure, not confrontation.
I mean, yeah, like it does seem to be, when you think about what's actually taking place in the region, all we ever hear about is Iran's malign influence. But when you actually look at who's doing what, the destruction is coming from really one side. But I want to turn for a moment to Turkey, Giorgio, because, you know, Turkey has had harsh words for Israel, very strong words against Israel since all this started. But everyone always makes the point that these words don't mean a lot because Erdogan still maintains relations with the Israelis. Do you think that this might change as this escalates? And also, I could add to that, perhaps Turkey might even see some opportunities here. You know, I know there's a lot of speculation from people in the region that, you know, given that Israel's on what it perceives to be a winning streak, perhaps Syria would be in the crosshairs. And, you know, all those rebel groups will be reactivated, which is something that Turkey played a pretty big role in helping with. So where do you see Turkey going from here with regard to the genocide in Gaza, the escalating war on Lebanon, escalation with Iran, and potential to kind of re-destroy Syria?
Well, it's always important to consider the role that Turkey plays in the region, being an influential Muslim country, also a member of NATO, and a country that has very deep economic relations with the Arab states, Israel, and European states. So I think to answer this question, it's important to realize that since the current party ruling Turkey, AKP, has been in power, there have definitely been previous episodes in which tensions between Ankara and Tel Aviv got quite nasty. I'm sure all your viewers remember the flotilla incident of 2010. And during those previous episodes, there was very harsh rhetoric from Erdogan and others in the Turkish leadership. But aside from the rhetoric, there were always deep economic relations between Israel and Turkey that proved resilient. So we always had to distinguish between sort of political statements and then the economics of the bilateral relationship. Earlier this year, Turkey announced a trade embargo on Israel, which seemed to suggest that this current crisis in bilateral relations was playing out differently. I have no doubt that the trade between the two countries has taken a huge hit, and the embargo should not be dismissed as totally insignificant. But I'll caveat that with 2 points. One is there is trade that still continues. It just goes through other countries such as Greece. This is something that a number of media outlets have documented, and there are some youth groups, some pro-Palestine groups in Turkey that have spoken about the fact that trade is still going on through, Greek ports. And then also at the same time, there's the factor of Azerbaijani energy that we need to keep in mind. Azerbaijan and Israel have a very close relationship going back to the 1990s, right after the Soviet Union imploded. And Israel has depended very much on Azerbaijan's hydrocarbon exports. And I believe that when this year began, the Israelis sourced 20% of their oil imports from Azerbaijan. And at some point this year, that number jumped up to 40. Point being, Israel and its war machine have very much depended on Azerbaijani oil. That oil, as we all know, there's no border between Israel and Azerbaijan. That oil goes from Azerbaijan through Georgia, through Turkey, and then through the Mediterranean to Haifa. The Turkish government could cut off that flow if it wanted to. The thing is, Turkey and Azerbaijan have a very, very close alliance. There are few alliances in the world as close as the one between Ankara and Baku. And I think the reason why, at least one of the reasons why, the leadership in Turkey has not cut off that flow of Azerbaijani oil to Israel is because that would have a very negative impact on Azerbaijan's economy. That being said, there is a lot of pressure, sort of bottom-up pressure from different groups and individuals in Turkey who are saying it's very shameful that we allow this oil to come through our country into Israel, and we have the leverage to cut it off. And there is a growing push on the Turkish leadership to do so. The longer the genocide goes on in Gaza, I think that pressure is going to intensify. I'm not necessarily predicting that it's going to result in Ankara making that move, which would be very significant. But again, point being, there's going to be more pressure from the Turkish citizens on the leadership in Turkey to do that. We'll have to see how that plays out.
Oh,
you helping us sort?
Oh, never mind. I can hear you.
The recent response of Hezbollah's anti-tank guided missiles ATGM, which resulted in casualties among Israeli troops, shows the military capabilities of the resistance and its determination in the conflict. The official Hezbollah channel yesterday on October 21st released footage of their operation last week on October 15, 2024, that its fighters targeted a group of Zionist troops of the Golani Brigade near the Ramia site on the southern Lebanese border. At that time, the enemy troops with several vehicles and bulldozers were concentrated at the fence, and they were likely trying to infiltrate. However, 8 soldiers, as in the Hezbollah camera frame, were torn apart by the strong response of the guided missile after being fired, which killed and wounded them, amidst Israeli efforts which remained silent about the number of casualties. While the Golani troops tried to pull out their wounded comrades, once again, the resistance fighters surprised them with another missile of the same type. This action strengthened Hezbollah's position as a key player in the border region, and gained sympathy from its supporters, who view Hezbollah as a strong defender of their interests. The latest footage shows how Hezbollah fighters confront the occupation forces on the ground, in one of the locations in southern Lebanon. With complete calm, 2 soldiers from the elite Radwan Hezbollah force, armed with RPG and rifle, fought against an entire Israeli army unit for hours, shooting at an Israeli squadron from their positions, fortified in a destroyed building. Israel was unable to repel during the actions of Hezbollah fighters on the ground, so they had to resort to airstrikes. It became clear that Israel is suffering defeats every day in the ground invasion.
They don't show that on the news. Fake news. That was some innocent Palestinians being talked about in Israeli media, then y'all would have seen that video on ABC. But they're trying to hide this from y'all. Hold on. 3 seconds. Yes. Okay. Let me get this video. I'm looking for right here. Just like they don't want to talk about the butcher of Gaza, a colonel, him and several other colonels in the Israeli military was ambushed and killed. Now, Hezbollah targeted his funeral today. Israeli news talking about that they had to run and hide. They was targeting this man. They terrorizing Israel.
Welcome back to my channel, guys. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing, because I come up with all the updates that you want to hear. Also, you do not hear them from the Western media. So again, new here, consider subscribing. I will be telling you about this guy. It is not interesting just that he got killed being a colonel, but what is even more interesting is the story behind it. He is the butcher of the Jabalia camp. This guy is the most ruthless, most inhuman person that you can ever imagine. I will tell you exactly what happened. Let's talk about his demise, how he became unalive. So he got killed with some other, or according to one report, with several other soldiers from ITF. And this is what is coming in the news from our Israeli army radio. They said that Colonel Duxa, his name is Duxa, was accompanied by 3 other officers in 2 tanks inside Jabalia, claiming that he and the other officers came out of the tanks for a distance of 20 meters before they were killed by an explosive device detonated by the resistance. Now, here is a big problem with that story, because this story is suggesting that he came out from the tank, from the comfort of his tank, because when you are inside of the tank, you are much safer than if you're outside, inside of enemy territory. The narrative is changing all the time by the Israeli radio. The first explanation that was given was that he was inside of the tank. He did not come out. The next one the explanation was given was that no, he actually came out with 3 other officers. This is important. This is important and very, very significant. I'll tell you why in a second. You do not want to go anywhere. And then it basically says that the others included the deputy commander. So there is another commander who got killed with the colonel and others, and 162nd Division and the commander of the 52nd Battalion. The army radio said, noting that Colonel Duxa was among 4 colonels killed since the beginning of the war on Gaza. So he is number 4 in terms of the ranking. And you can imagine how these high-ranking officers from ITF, they're getting killed on a regular basis. For its part, the Palestinian resistance in Gaza sniped 2 Israeli soldiers and destroyed tanks and military vehicles belonging to the Israeli occupation in Jabalia area. Now, Al-Qassam Brigades, the military wing of Palestinian resistance movement Hamas, announced that its fighters had sniped and directly wounded 2 Israeli soldiers in the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. Obviously, we would not know anything about those 2 wounded soldiers. Are they still alive or are they unalive? I love to use that word unalive instead of saying dead, because YouTube is going to flag me if I say too many times that word. But are they alive or unalive? We do not know. But footage released by Al-Qassam showed clashes between its fighters and the occupation army following an ambush west of Jabalia refugee camp. Not only that, they were able to unalive this Colonel Duxa. I'll tell more about him, why he's a butcher and his connection with Yahya Sinwar. Yes, I will tell you that too. He does have a connection with Yahya Sinwar in a way you would never expect, because his army, his legion of army followed him to fight Yahya Sinwar in the past. This is quite an irony. And now we also see how he died, inside of a tank or outside of a tank. I'll connect the dots. The group also announced the targeting of a D9 military bulldozer with a Yasin 105 shell in the Al-Fallujah area west of Jabalia. So they have destroyed those tanks. Additionally, Al-Qassam also announced that targeting of a Nimr troop carrier with a tandem shell west of Jabalia refugee camp in the northern Gaza Strip. So coming under attack very, very rapidly. A short while later, it said that it had targeted and destroyed another Israeli Nimr personnel carrier with a Shawaz canister near the Khaznadar station northwest of Gaza City. What we again do not know or will not know is what happened to those ambush and what happened to those soldiers, ITF soldiers, that got wounded, because all you know is that they got wounded and they were taken to hospital and this happened, that happened, but you never know exactly their fate. Are they alive, unalive? We do not know. Now let's talk about Hezbollah a little bit first, and then we'll talk about Duxa more. So the fighters of the Islamic resistance at 12:05 a.m. on Sunday bombed the occupied city of Safed with rocket barrage. Now, in one day, Hezbollah, Islamic resistance, Al-Qassam brigades, they're carrying out so many attacks in just one day. According to some reports, they carry out at least 25 attacks. Means every hour, round the clock, they are chasing these ITF forces without any rest. It does tell me that the tactic that they're using, Hamas and Hezbollah and all of these proxies, obviously Hamas is not a proxy, they are the resistance force, is that they want to chase them, make them run, ITF run, and then make them tired. Once they are tired of running, because they are being chasing away by Hamas and Hezbollah, then they want to rest, they want to have some break, and then they gather together in one place. And this is why we're seeing that a lot of reports suggesting that Hezbollah and Hamas fighters, they're actually targeting those gatherings. Every single day I see reports that these ITF soldiers, terrorist forces of Israel, they were resting somewhere, and then all of a sudden a drone came, or all of a sudden they were under attack or was sniped by Hezbollah or Hamas, depending on where they are. Therefore, it is quite obvious to me the strategy that these people are using, Hamas and Hezbollah, which is make them run, make them tired, and then attack them and catch them off guard. And therefore, every single hour, there is one operation taking place somewhere in Gaza or in Lebanon. And this is why the IDF forces, ITF forces, Israeli terrorist force, they are using fighter jets to bomb areas more than ever before. They're increasing the number. There was a recent shipment. Why I'm saying this, there was a recent shipment coming from Greece going to Haifa, was actually intercepted by protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters, and they said this container cannot go to Haifa. It cannot leave Greece. There is a big protest going on. It tells me that
doing. Also follow him on all of social media. You get regular updates if you want to know what was happening in the past few minutes or past few hours. If it happens, freepalestine.video. Also, when you go to freepalestine.video, it's critical that you donate. And if you can afford it, you can become a monthly subscriber. Also, share freepalestine.video on all your social media platforms and put a little note for people to remind them to donate also in the importance of this work. It's not a lot of work like this. It is actual English language video that's not controlled by the government or the empire, coming right out of the vicinity. Let's start here. Something interesting happened, and that is the death of, I think it's Yahya Sinwar. And, you know, as a person who, I didn't know anything about him, didn't know anything about who he was or the dynamics, but I saw that the Israelis, you know, they released something. We've killed this guy, Yahya Sinwar, and we released. And when I read it, knowing nothing about it, here's the way I saw it. As I read what they said, man, it looks like they sent special forces in to get this guy. He fought him off with machine guns. He threw grenades. The special forces, this is a 60-year-old guy. They had to back off and fire in with tanks to get one guy. And then ultimately, I see this drone video. They come in and he's severely injured. And then, like, in a final act of resistance, almost like, screw you, he picks up a wood and just piece of wood and threw it at the drone like, man, I'll never give up. I'm fighting you to the end. And I thought to myself, well, it was a mistake. Why would you release that? Anybody that looks at that's going to say, man, that dude's, he's a bad dude. And you're also going to look at it and say, you're not defeating those people. They're fighting to the end. You know, that was superhero kind of thing that I'm like, any man, I'm a man, any man that looks at that's going to be like, yeah, that's the way I want to go out, like that dude right there, kicking ass and taking names. Anyway, your thoughts?
Yeah, clearly the supremacy that's in the heads of the Zionists and their kind of drive to try to denigrate Palestinians is blinding them to reality. So much so that, as you said, releasing that video is a huge mistake, because what we saw is, here is a man with one hand missing. And he was, according to their own timeline of the operation, is that they were on the field in Rafah, and by accident, they were not like even looking for him. It's been a year that they haven't been able to pinpoint where Yahya Sinwar is, and by accident they came to face with a fighting group that he was leading, and engaged them, and they lost at least 2 soldiers, Israelis, in this firefight. And then they fired a tank shell on the house, which everybody else in his group was was martyred in this fight. And then that's when they sent the drone to see if anybody's alive, and he was alive. And he got to go and sit himself on a couch. And some of our viewers may remember there's a very famous picture of Yahya Sinwar a few years ago after one of the rounds of attacks on Gaza, when they also attacked his house. He sat on a couch outside his destroyed house and put one foot over the other. That's a very famous photo of him. So he managed to get himself on a couch to sit in that position. And when this drone comes, he grabs something with his good hand and throws it at this drone. And then they finally had to fire a second tank shell on the house to assassinate him. And so, I was amazed at how many Japanese samurai graphics came out over the last week. I was shocked that even the Japanese people were doing these anime and graphics of Yahya Sinwar as a samurai that fights to the last breath. So if the Japanese people are doing this, you could imagine, of course, the feelings in the streets in the Arabic and Muslim world and the Palestinian people inside Gaza. They thought that assassinating him and showing this video is going to demoralize people. On the contrary, it uplifted the whole region. Everybody, especially after the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, now with this assassination, they were actually invigorated. They were like, okay, well, the Palestinian people will fight to the last moment. And his martyrdom symbolized this idea that we'd rather be killed than live without dignity. Okay, so give me my freedom, or or give me my death. Situation. This is an embodiment of that, and I think now his death, his image of his death, his last moments are going to be eternalized, and I believe his assassination and his martyrdom is even going to be more significant than even the images of Che Guevara in the last century. So now we have an image that's going to carry over for the next 80, 100 years as the symbol of resistance to injustice.
I also think it reflects something about the Israelis, the fact that they thought that this would, in the West, period, the Israelis, I say, the U.S. empire, U.S. imperialism, and that is that they go throwing their weight all around the world, but they don't want to lose anybody. If you're honest, they're happy to lose Israelis. They're happy to lose Ukrainians. I mean, these are proxy people and they're expendable assets for U.S. imperialism. But so they view the death of one of their soldiers, proxies, whatever, as some terrible, horrible, unthinkable thing. And you're humiliated if you lose someone, wherein people who are being oppressed view that as a symbol of liberation. We're all going to go sooner or later. And how do you go is the question. And I think it demonstrates the oppressor versus the oppressed, the view of going out with dignity, of standing up to imperialism.
Look at this. What people will remember of Yahya Sinwar here. They will remember him as a young man that was jailed in Israeli dungeons for almost 20 years and was released in a previous prisoner exchange between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And when he came out, he had built so much relationships with people inside these Israeli dungeons that he vowed openly when he came out that he will work to release every Palestinian prisoner. He was the architect of October 7th, the Al-Aqsa flood, because he felt that he has to keep his promise to his brothers and sisters that are in these Israeli dungeons. And the whole operation was designed to capture as many Israeli soldiers to exchange them to the Palestinians. And he kept his word till his last moment. He fought from his youth till the day of his martyrdom for the liberation of the Palestinian people and specifically the prisoners. And maybe our viewers don't know this, but Palestinians view our prisoners as living martyrs. These are the people that have paid the highest price for the liberation of Palestine. They didn't die and their life with misery ended. No, they are living the worst fate of the whole Palestinian people in those Israeli dungeons where they're tortured on a daily basis and so on. So this is the stature of Palestinian prisoners in our community. And this is why we are willing to all be martyrs in order to release those living martyrs that are living the worst fate that anyone can live.
Here's something that's kind of weird. This thing comes out recently about a intelligence leak that the Israelis are going to do this, they're going to attack Palestine, Iran, blah, blah, blah. To me, you got to be an absolute fool if you see this as a leak. It is a public relations operation for some reason, but I find it hard to believe that, you know how it's a coordinated leak for whatever reason. I think for one thing, the Israelis are very, very wary because they know that they're playing with fire. Anyway, your thoughts on this so-called leak about Israel's plan to smite the Iranians?
So let's take the possibilities that they're putting forward and just examine, even if their own theory is true. So let's imagine that somebody in the U.S. Administration leaked this. Okay, truly. Well, it means that there is people within the American administration that are not happy with what they're doing. Okay, let's take the other option, that somebody within the Israeli government leaked it. Again, it is a big failure for them. It means that there is dissension within the government, that there is possibly even spies within the government. In both cases, the U.S. And the final option is this idea that this is all propaganda that is trying to, affect the population in the West and their opinions. Well, it backfired also, right? And it's making the Israelis look like crazy monsters. Okay, I know that they are insisting for the last year to tell the whole world, fuck around and you'll find out. We're crazy, you kill one of ours, we'll kill 1 million of yours. This is the only propaganda they're putting forward. But it is at this point when they are threatening to attack nuclear sites, this doesn't anymore scare the Iranians or the Palestinians. This scares all of the planet. All of humanity knows that once we open the door on nuclear explosions, whether it's attacking of nuclear sites and or use of nuclear weapons, it's over. It means anybody can use it, anybody can do it, and then it's hell and it's Armageddon. Okay, so in reality, it's backfiring on them because everybody on the planet right now is wishing for the safety of Iran, that its nuclear reactors don't get attacked, and they're all wishing that Israel fails in whatever mischievous criminal activities that they're planning. So all around, it shows you, no matter what the true story is it a leak or not, or was it propaganda, it's a total failure for Israel, no matter which way we look at it.
I certainly agree. Let me ask you about something. So this is the election in the U.S. We hadn't discussed this, but I think it's important. So I'm watching the other day, and there were some Muslim activists, and they were basically saying, "No, we're not voting for Kamala." And they said, "Well, but you'll get Trump." And they said, "We want to exercise our power, and our power is we can unseat the leader of the hegemony." That we can do that right here in Michigan, and we're going to do it. And they didn't care who wins. They were going to exercise their power. We see an election in which Kamala Harris is out there. And now, in the Black community, they're like, you know what I mean? They've been voting Democrat for I don't know how long. No, thank you, not interested. They're losing all of their traditional voters. And certainly a lot of it has to do with their abysmal job they've done as far as the economy and foreign policy and everything else. But there's a huge chunk of people that simply because of what's happening in occupied Palestine have said, I'm done with the Democrats. You know, one of my radio shows, one that I still have, I had a guy call, I've said this many times, because I'm, you know, I don't support Democrats or Republicans. And I had a caller who had called me since 2016 telling me, you're the one that got Donald Trump in, you made Hillary lose. Since 2016, who called me and said, I apologize. I was wrong. You were right. And he said that over Israel, what it's doing to wake people up, and that what they're doing is even going to have a dramatic effect on politics right here. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was watching this video of students, and you know, Republican students in one of the universities in the U.S., and they're arguing. One of the candidates for the Republican Party has set up a table and is trying to get the students out. And here is white, conservative, Christian, you know, students on campus arguing with this Republican candidate about the genocide in Gaza. And so we know that, you know, all of this planet has been watching nonstop feed of a Holocaust broadcasted. We've reached a saturation point. There's nobody anywhere in the furthest point of this planet that hasn't seen some kind of images of this and hasn't been affected by it. So these traditional fake lines that the elite in the US have been, you know, working on for 100 years to manufacture are falling apart. You know, a decent Christian person, no matter what their ideas of what is the economic policy of the country should be, is horrified seeing children, you know, being massacred or barbecued on live TV. Even if this person is, let's say, anti-abortion or critical of LGBT, whatever it is, let's say in their Christian right positionality, they are also saying, well, I don't know, do I choose genocide just because I don't want abortion here? That doesn't go together, because, you know, a killing of children, whether they're in somebody's womb or they're like out in the street being barbecued, is still killing children. Let's say, you see, so those differentiations that the elite in the West has tried to make into huge chasms between people are disappearing. And similarly, as we see in those racialized communities, the Black, the Arab, the Muslim communities that traditionally vote Democrat because, let's say, they want more rights or more jobs or whatever it is, they're like saying, is that worth a genocide for me? Can I, as an Arab or Black African origin American, accept a genocide just so I can have a bigger piece of the pie in the USA of the dream that nobody can catch us?
Yeah, but you ain't gonna get anyway. You're not gonna get it anyway. Well, let me add this, and not to interrupt you. Additionally, it reveals what you're dealing with. So how can you look at them and think they're going to do anything for me? They're going to help me. They care about me. They're revealing themselves as these demonic beasts. And it's like, can I really believe that a person that I'm watching doing this, that a party, that an entity that I'm watching doing this is ever going to respond to what I want in any way in a humane manner? It's throw there and said, wait a minute, now I see you for who you are. Now I understand why you never did anything for me, because you're an evil entity.
Yes, yes. And so, and the vast majority of human beings, no matter what their background is, what part of the world they come from, what their religion is, are decent. And so we know that the vast majority of Americans are against the genocide in Palestine, just like the vast majority of Brits and Canadians and everybody. So this vast majority of the population that doesn't want the genocide is realizing, no matter what party they used to vote for, that neither of those parties will actually deliver on their will as a population. So this is creating, I think, pressures that are building within the establishment in the West. And I think it's starting to scare the elite a lot. We see yesterday there was, in the middle of the night, raids in the US on student dorms, and arrests and with hoods and everything, and anti-terrorism squads walking into homes of leadership of student demonstrators in California. This is unheard of even at the time of the anti-Vietnam demonstrations. Nobody got raided in the middle of the night during that of the student leadership. Yes, they shot them in the university, which is coming. I think it's coming. Okay, but add to it the nabbing of journalists in the UK, the charges, anti-terrorism charges in the UK against different journalists and so on. You could see that the elite in all of the West, because they are refusing to allow the will of the people on this issue of genocide in Palestine, they are now getting scared of the possible unrest, and therefore they are going, instead of giving the people what they want, they are going the other way, and they're going full fascist. So it's the people in the US should be, I think everybody should be worried about their rights, let alone about the genocide. But the freedoms and rights of American citizens are going to be stripped, and people are going to come under threat. And it's rolling out. I don't know what's going to stop it.
Yeah, it's already happening. They shut down RT and Radio Sputnik with sanctions. I mean, bit by bit. And the way that's where it works. They're throwing people off of platforms. They're demonetizing. Like, I had a video recently. I did 2 videos. Of all the videos I did 2 videos. And one of them was about Ukraine. And it said, like, Israel takes a bloody nose and Ukraine is losing, something like that. YouTube demonetized it. I did another one that said Black voters are leaving Kamala Harris. YouTube demonetized these videos. And I've been doing these kind of videos for years, just random things that are going on. And now they seem frightened, I guess, because it's a couple weeks before the election, scared, frightened, whatever. And they're demonetizing videos that they didn't normally, shut down Sputnik, shut down RT, shut down any voices. But it's too late. You know what I mean? The numbers are, and what's going, it's too late. They're trying to, but as they say, the horse is already out of the barn.
Oh yes, and the genie's out of the bottle. That's another one.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's impossible to put it back. We can't erase people's memory of watching a genocide and watching all the politicians in the U.S. and the West line up, Hi Hitler, basically. For Netanyahu, or that standing ovations in the Congress. I mean, those are, these are going to be in the history books. These moments will forever be a taint on the history of the U.S. and Western civilization as a whole, quote unquote civilization.
I was about to say.
Yeah.
Just because the Western country has the West has mistaken industrialization with civilization, 2 totally different things. Now, what's happening with the Iraqi and the Yemen and Syrian, the resistance forces outside of Hezbollah? I'm not saying they're all one entity, I believe, but what's going on with them? Anything?
Yes. So in Yemen, we obviously had the attacks with B-2 bombers on Yemen, and that was like clearly actually an admittance that Yemen is a world power. I mean, when is the last time the U.S. used B-2 bombers on anybody? And that also tells you that all the other Air Force components, like the drones and F-15s and 16s, F-35s, were not working and/or were under threat of being shot down by Yemenis. So therefore, they had to go as almost to the end of the atmosphere to be safe bombing Yemen. The other thing that we saw with Yemen is that yesterday the American Air Force claimed that 2 pilots died in a crash training. But this fighter jet and those pilots are actually attached to the Eisenhower aircraft carrier. So what we know then, and the Yemenis came out and said this, they said, no, actually, we shot at this jet, and we sank it. And that they also fired at the aircraft carrier and hit it. So right now, Yemen is on a class of its own. Nobody has hit aircraft carriers since World War II. American aircraft carriers, this is what Yemen is doing. And they're able to shoot down anything and everything that the US flies except these B-2 bombers. And they're continuing to bombard the Zionist colony with hypersonic missiles and ballistic missiles and so forth. Iraq, we saw yesterday in Syria, actually this morning, an attack on the Conoco American air base occupying the oil fields in Deir ez-Zor in northeast Syria. There was an attack of a wave of drones and missiles. What's significant about this attack and the constant attacks on this base is that's where the Americans have stationed the THAAD missile system in Syria. They brought it into Syria a few months ago. So we don't know what's the status of the THAAD system, but it's most probably the main target of any of these attacks to take it out of service. And Iraq is firing, is announcing every day around 6 different operations, each one of them with a wave of drones and missiles being fired on Israel. And that's much higher than it was a few weeks ago. And the Iraqi resistance also promised that if Iran is attacked and any of the American bases anywhere in the region, including inside Iraq, are used in this attack, then they will become immediately a target, and that Iraqi resistance will be the one responsible to destroy American bases that are used in this attack.
Wow. Something I wanted to ask you about, and I think it's important in the context of this discussion. Brics is going on. And I read that, and this is to me very important, the Indians and the Chinese, they had this border dispute that, certainly US imperialists felt that they could take advantage of that and, split them. Well, apparently they've resolved that issue. It certainly appears to me that Brics is a very powerful entity and it's growing, and that at the heart of Brics is a need to free 30% of the world from the oppression of US sanctions. How important is this? Your thoughts on Brics?
Very, very important. You see, the US was hoping that this dispute between India and China could trigger a war between 2 nuclear powers and also the most populous countries on the planet that will, destabilize all this region and depopulate these countries. You see, like already 1 out of 5 people almost is Chinese. I think 1 out of 4 people is Chinese and or Indian on the planet right now. So we're talking about the fear that the West, Europeans and their colonies have is that they, although they genocided 3 continents and overpopulated themselves, they're seeing their percentage of the overall population of the planet slowly returning to pre-colonization percentage. Europe is just the appendix, useless appendix of Asia, and their population wasn't significant on a global scale until the genocide of the Americans in Oceania. So now this is why we hear this constant talk by the West about overpopulation. The world is not overpopulated. It's just too many Europeans in it, honestly. This is so look, it is very significant what happened between China and India, because this border dispute goes back all the way to World War II. and the drawing of this map by the Brits. These territories are very significant, and if there is an exchange of these territories, whatever the treaties that is being signed right now between Moody and Z, is going to end this dispute forever. And if it's ended forever, then you can have the two biggest population centers in the world working together. There'll be trains, there'll be products being half produced here, half produced there, and they'll take over the whole world market. India and could be lifted just like China out of poverty. This is important, and I think looking at how Brics is trying to solve all the disputes between countries that are joining it. Remember, China helped broker kind of a peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia. This shows you that the priority that Brics has is for peace and mutual prosperity. And that's the thing that the West don't want. They don't want peace, and they don't want mutual prosperity. They want you to be stuck in war in your country so they can suck out all the resources from under that country for the cheapest price possible. So this is becoming a glaring contradiction between the two. Nobody can miss now what Brics wants and what the West wants. And this is, I don't know how long the West can keep on beating up some of its own vassals to stay under control before they jump the boat into and get on the Brics boat.
Well, the issue they're having, to me, in the West is this: internal collapse and internal uprising, because the people, for instance, in the United States are asking, they see these hurricanes one after the other. We get hurricanes, people have the whole towns washed away. You've seen it, terrible, terrible thing. And the people are like, okay, can you help us? And the government's like, sure, we can. We're going to send 8 billion more to Israel and 8 billion to Ukraine. And the people inside the empire are starting to say, wait a minute. This is supposed to be, and that's what happens to empires eventually. An empire has this imperial infrastructure that it has to maintain to dominate its colonies, and in the U.S. dominate the world. And it's inevitable that it gets too expensive to dominate everything. And sooner or later, the people at home start saying, we're hungry, we're struggling, this is difficult. And we know you're rich. It's like someone that has a rich father that drives a Lamborghini and buys all of these things and has 20 beautiful wives and 20 beautiful girlfriends beside that, planes and all, and the person sitting home and they don't have any food on the table. They start asking, what the hell's going on with us? And they start waking up to realize that their government's just not into them. Your thoughts on, because the empires, they're war and killing and all those things. Oh yeah, that's all. They're into that all day long. But I think their big fear, and that fear is coming to fruition, to reality, is that the people at home start saying, we're not getting a piece of the pie and we're not going to put up with it any longer. And I think that's the thing that's starting to happen here. That's what we're seeing with the election. That's what we're seeing with the anger everywhere. Anyway.
You're right on all of that. And I would add to it also, part of, this imperial expansion, what happens is that you start having to appease different elites in different components of the empire, right? To guarantee the front line of something, you have to give a provincial viceroy some more say in things, right? And once it starts becoming like this, the Congress, Senate of the empire starts becoming more and more useless in terms of ability to have say in the decisions of the government. So the US has a Congress and Senate that's supposed to represent the citizens inside the borders of the US. Now, because it's an empire, and the empire has all those viceroys and regional governors and so on in Europe and the Zionist colony and so forth, then the actual workings of the empire are decided outside the Congress in this, undefined, unaccountable dealings between the different elites, okay, that from the US and Israel and so on. And this, at one point, the frontline, most vicious viceroy, provincial governor, who is without them, the empire starts shrinking, they start getting more and more say. Okay, and that is what happened in the Roman Empire. Okay, and this is what's happening right now. This is why Netanyahu has more say on what is happening in the lives of Americans and the expenditures of the American budget than the American Congress. Because in the views of those elite that are unaccountable, that are really governing the empire, the decisions of Netanyahu and his wants and his needs are more important than the wants and needs of the populace inside the United States. And at some point, that's how the collapse begins. So we will be hearing very soon those cries of no taxation without representation, okay? And or we will see whole regions break off and claim to be the empire. Remember how, the Eastern Roman Empire breaks off from the Western Roman Empire and says, I am the Caesar. No, I am the Caesar. We may hear some European leaders say, I am the Caesar very soon also, as the center that's far away from the front starts losing control of the edges.
I certainly agree with that. I understand Hezbollah has been doing strikes. They've increased their missiles. Certainly, we know what's going on with Israel, but I understand that there's been significant more attacks, that after the death of Sinwar, that it was announced that this is a new phase. What do you know about that somebody threw a drone at Netanyahu's house? Apparently, you said, "Hey, they're trying to kill me." Sinwar, he ain't okay. He wasn't standing around there fighting to the end. He was running for a bunker. Your thoughts on what's going on now as far as the Hezbollah's attacks on?
Just an hour ago, I was in the press conference for the head of the media bureau of Hezbollah. His name is Mohammed Afif, and all the international media was there. There was a drone flying over, so everybody, it's anyways. But in this press conference, Hezbollah, in the mouth of their spokesperson, basically acknowledged and took full responsibility for the attack on Netanyahu's summer residence in Caesarea, just outside Tel Aviv. And that was the first time that they actually acknowledged that they are the ones responsible for it. And at the same time, the Israeli media earlier today finally gave us the details of what happened in the house of Netanyahu. And apparently that the Hezbollah drone went through the window of the bedroom of Netanyahu and exploded inside his bedroom. Okay, and so for more than a week, for a week almost, that they were trying to tell us that it didn't even hit the building, but now
it shot down. Yeah, they said the first thing I heard was it was shot down before it got there.
Yeah, and then they're like, no, it just hit just beside a different building, and then they were like, oh no, it fell in the swimming pool. This is like the crazy, and now they're admitting it actually hit the window and went through it and exploded inside the bedroom. So clearly, Hezbollah will be continuing to aim to assassinate Netanyahu. His death will end this war, unlike the martyrdom of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah or the martyrdom of Sinwar or Haniyeh. Those wouldn't have ended the war. But the death of Netanyahu will collapse the Israeli government, and there will be no more war. There will be no more government in Israel. It's not a rebel group like Hezbollah or Hamas. That doesn't matter that the leader dies or not. But here it's an elected official that supposedly once he's dead, they have to have an election. So all of this is clear that Hezbollah is going to continue trying to assassinate, liquidate this garbage man called Netanyahu. And we may even see them targeting other officials within the Israeli government, specifically Ben Gvir, who lives inside Al-Khalil, Hebron, in the occupied center of the city, with only 2,000 colonists that are surrounding the Ibrahimi mosque and you know, making the life of Palestinians in the old city of Hebron miserable for 30 years now. One drone hitting the home of Ben Gvir inside Hebron will mean 2,000, those 2,000 nasty of the nastiest Zionist colonists will run away, even if they don't kill him. And Hebron will be liberated with one drone. So it could happen any moment now. The same thing with Smotrich, who lives in Maalit Adumim colony in the West Bank. Again, that's an easier target. Both of them are easier targets than Netanyahu because there is no air defenses in the West Bank. Okay, the Israelis didn't put THAADs and Patriots and slingshot this and that in the West Bank because they don't care about defending the Palestinians. So a drone, drones and missiles that are reaching Caesarea out and hitting Netanyahu's official residence can definitely hit the home of Ben Gvir or Smotrich in those colonies in the West Bank. And I think they will be right now on the top of the priorities because even the attempt of killing them will have a huge effect on the presence of colonists inside the West Bank. The other thing that I would say about the Hezbollah operations is that now they're upwards of 30 to 35 operations a day being announced by Hezbollah. And these operations include, you know, multiple waves, each one of them, of drones and missiles and confrontations on the front line. Today, they already destroyed 4 different Merkavas, the Israeli tanks. And up and, you know, today we also, there was a video, look at how stupid the Israelis are with their propaganda at this point. Just like they released the Sinwar assassination video and it blew in their face, this morning they released a video from a drone of a Hezbollah fighter from the special forces, the Radwan forces, in a village on the front line, right on the border. And he was holding back a whole platoon of Israelis for 3 hours by himself. And you can watch him from this video. And in this video, he's standing and he's tot, 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 tot. And you could see bullets hitting beside his head. And he's not even flinching. Not flinching. And so he held this whole platoon down. I don't know how many he killed, how many he injured. And eventually, they had to fire from an F-16 on top of him to stop him. This is the difference between a person that believes, that has faith, and also is defending their homeland, that they're there to give to their people, and an invading, occupying, colonizing force that cannot fight this one person. Just like Haniya held a whole platoon of Israelis, and that shows you that every Palestinian or Lebanese fighter is Ismail Haniya, Sinwar, Yahya Sinwar. So it's not going to end well for the Israelis.
Yeah, and you know, the thing about it is the attempts at some of the Israeli leaderships, and that is that the Hezbollah wasn't doing that. You know what I mean? That they're the ones who decided, okay, we're going to do these decapitation stripes. They're the ones that Hezbollah did not. I mean, this is way into a year into the conflict, over a year into the conflict. Hezbollah had never, or any of the resistance forces had never done any of these attempted decapitation strikes. And the Israelis introduced that element into the conflict. And I mean, certainly if you introduce one, you know, the old saying, if you hit me with a chicken feather, I can hit you with a turkey feather, right? When the Israelis, they can't say, well, this is unfair. You can't do this. How dare you? Because that's actually part of their normal day-to-day tactics. And so now I just suspect they never thought that the resistance forces would have the technological wherewithal to do that. And now I'm sure they're pretty shaken to realize, you know, if they could figure out that through their intelligence, that all of these Israeli military leaders were having a meeting somewhere and they could attack that and kill a lot of them, that they do have some intelligence as far as the movement of Israeli leadership. And certainly if they really chose to do a decapitation strike, if they launched a salvo of missiles and drones, if they really wanted to, it appears they could be successful, and that has to be quite alarming, particularly, let me add this, in light of the threats against attacking Iran and things of that nature, because they'd have to think, well, if we attacked Iran, it might open the door for some things that hasn't happened in the past, and that could be one of them.
Definitely, definitely. And, you know, the intelligence gathering is probably the scariest part for the Israelis, because you know, to be able to know when Netanyahu was in the house and to hit it and to know where his bedroom is. Okay, so this means not only you have satellite and communication infiltration, but also you probably have somebody on the ground. So now they are freaked out. They arrested, I think, 4 or 8 Israelis yesterday, that they're claiming the Israelis, that these Israeli citizens were collaborating with Iran and sharing intelligence with them. They were all Jewish, by the way, not one of them being, you know, Palestinian Israeli. So that is even scarier for the Israeli intelligence services, that now they don't only have to watch the Palestinian citizens of the state of Israel, but also their own. Many of them were actually also young, 19, 20. So that shows you like that there is a chasm, you know, being built up between the older generation of Israelis and the younger ones. So many indications of failures and cracks appearing in this.
We got some late breaking news the revolutionaries can use. I will be reporting on this later, but arrested. P. Diddy is in that saying like he voiced to me. Arrested former CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch, Mike Jeffries, big wig, has been arrested for federal sex trafficking charges. Oh, Diddy trying to find a way to come home. So we're going to be running that later tonight when I get a lot of information on what's actually going on. But we know they got that. They got him because of Diddy, for sure.
The structures of Israel. I would say that this was the first time, by the way, any resistance group since 1948 attempting to liquidate an Israeli prime minister. Not even during the 1973 war between Syria, Egypt, and the Zionists did the Syrian or Egyptian military try to kill the Israeli prime minister. And over the last, 76 years, there was only one attempt on an Israeli minister, and it was successful. It was in 2002 during the Second Intifada that the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine liquidated the fascist, Kahanist Minister of Tourism of Israel. He also lived in Hebron, Al-Khalil. We are seeing precedents being set, and whatever the Israelis have opened now as doors, or what is acceptable military activities, well, although Hezbollah and the whole axis of resistance were trying not to engage in such manner, now they are, well, if it's acceptable under international law, for instance, to attack banks. Yesterday and the day before, the Israelis, and today, attacked the Good Loan Co-op Bank. Multiple of their head branches around the country, claiming that it's a Hezbollah bank. Of course, it is not a Hezbollah bank. Number one, it's a bank that doesn't charge interest, so it follows the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim prohibition on usury, and people deposit money in there and help others, start small businesses and or give small loans to families with no interest and so on. So it is now because the Israelis are saying, well, we can attack this bank because we accuse them of supporting Hezbollah financially. Well, this now opens the door then to attack any Western bank that is funding Israel. So Citibank in New York could be hit. It's a legitimate target. Berkeley Bank, TD Bank in Canada, whatever it is. It even justifies the 9/11 attacks. You see, this is the crazy world that Israel is imposing on us. Because if we remember Osama bin Laden, and who knows if he really did it, September 11, if it wasn't the Israeli Mossad and the Saudi intelligence anyways. But according to the lure, is that Osama bin Laden attacked the Twin Towers because that's a financial hub that is funding American wars that are genociding Arabs and Muslims. Well, if Israel can do it, then you know what? Maybe Osama bin Laden has the right to do that. So the reality, the normalization that we're seeing of these unacceptable war crimes and crimes against humanity and illegal targets, assassinations, destruction of civilian infrastructure, killing civilians. Now that Israel is normalizing it for a year and the West is refusing to make it stop, well, finally, we are starting to see that the axis of resistance is saying, well, you know, if it's allowed, we're going to do it too.
Last thing, speaking of targets, Israel has said that they wanted to target, they were planning on targeting hospitals. They have been targeting some hospital zones. And but it seems to me, everything I read about what's happening on the front, their attempt to make an incursion into Lebanon is failing dramatically, as we know. They just can't. They cannot. I mean, you know, they cannot take the kind of losses that they would take to actually do a ground invasion of Lebanon. They'd be you know, their military would be devastated and their country would fall apart. But it seems to me that some of this is a level of frustration that they can't win on foot on the battlefield, and instead they are attacking civilian targets. What's happening with the claims of you know, that by Israel that hospitals are legitimate targets and supposedly there's gold under one or some such craziness?
You know, today I visited two of those hospitals. The first was hit last night just beside it. The Hariri hospital, you know, it's supposed to be, Hariri is the love of the Americans and so on, the assassinated prime minister of Lebanon that used to work with Americans. So this is his hospital, his family's endowment. It's the biggest public hospital in Lebanon. And they hit beside it, right beside it. Honestly, it was a sad sight. It's a working class neighborhood. A lot of Sudanese, Ethiopian foreign workers living in these buildings, a lot of Syrian refugees. And they hit 4 buildings, you know, 3-story buildings that are just cinder block. It's not even, doesn't have outside, or it's not fancy buildings. So they all were down to the ground, and 6 buildings around them all, you know, partially destroyed. When I was there, they were still pulling out some of the martyrs. A lot of the Sudanese and Ethiopian communities showed up because, you know, these communities support each other, and their embassies abandoned them, and there's no such thing as Sudan. Even who knows how this, you know, a poor person that got martyred is gonna get home. You know, who knows how they're gonna get his body home. You know, it's a sad thing to die away from your home, from your country in such ways. And that damaged also the facade of the Hariri hospital. So it's clear, just pure terrorism, what the Israelis were doing. And the second hospital that they're threatening, and they did this 3D graphic like they did for the hospital, Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza, if our viewers remember, 6 months ago or what have you, we're losing track in the genocide, when the Israelis claimed that Hamas has tunnels and headquarters under the Shifa hospital, and in the end there was nothing. They were claiming that the Sahel hospital in the middle of Beirut has a huge bunker under it that all the gold and money of Hezbollah is stored in. So the management of the hospital opened the doors for international media to come in and allowed everybody to go anywhere they want to in the hospital. Of course, there was no tunnels, there's no storage areas, there's nothing. In fact, the hospital is built in the 1970s and early 80s, before the existence of Hezbollah. And it is a government-funded hospital. So it's not like, let's say, taking money from Hezbollah to keep its operations. There's some hospitals that do that are funded by Hezbollah or other parties, but this is directly funded by the Lebanese government, and the Lebanese government is infiltrated left and right and up and down by every intelligence agency in the world, and the Lebanese government is not captured by Hezbollah or something like this. So, but it was also still sad to see that the hospital had to evacuate all its workers and all its patients. I mean, hospitals are holy places. Honestly, it's where we save people's lives and birth new children and new generations. It was a ghost hospital when we came into this tour, and it is expected that the Israelis may attack it. But as we were leaving the tour, the Lebanese army showed up with all these APCs and anti-air defense small machine gun APCs tanks, and stationed all around the hospital. Maybe the presence of the Lebanese army around the hospital will deter the Israelis from attacking it, not because they're scared of the Lebanese army, it's just because they don't want martyrs from the Lebanese army. So, because up until now, the Lebanese army is collaborating with the Americans and the Israelis. But if you have martyrs in the Lebanese army, maybe there will be a change in the position of the Lebanese army.
Thank you very much, Laith Maroof. I think that's
New Delhi and Beijing have shocked the West just a day before the Brics summit. On Monday, Indian Foreign Secretary announced they have reached an agreement with China to resolve the crisis along the de facto border called the Line of Actual Control, or the LAC. This agreement will lead to eventual disengagement at the border. Yes, you heard that right. The crisis that began with bloody war between Indian and Chinese soldiers 4 years ago in the Galwan Valley is finally resolved now. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said, as a result of the discussions that have taken place over the last several weeks, an agreement has been arrived at on patrolling arrangements along the LAC in the India-China border area, and this is leading to disengagement and eventually a resolution of the issues that had arisen in these areas in 2020. Now, it is important to note that this announcement came just a day before the beginning of the Brics summit in Russia's Kazan. Both Chinese leader Xi Jinping and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi are going to be there and are expected to meet. Russian leader Vladimir Putin will also meet both leaders privately. One thing is quite clear here. The three giants of Asia are trying to put up a joint front against the West, especially at a time when a G7 country, Canada, is locked in a diplomatic standoff with India. Canada last week accused Indian diplomats of being involved in the murder of a Sikh separatist leader named Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Ties between Canada and India have nosedived since then. Amid escalating conflict between India and a major Western country, reconciliation with China sets a powerful narrative in favor of Brics. It also shows that Brics nations are willing to overcome their mutual disagreements and explore opportunities together. China has also adopted the approach of cooperation and not aggression, given its slowing economy and rising importance of trade with India. China knows that if Donald Trump comes back to power, he may go after China like he did until 4 years ago. China will need partners like Russia and India to shore up its economy in that case. It is also significant to talk about the Russia factor here. It is highly likely that Russia may have played the role of a mediator here. On September 11th, Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval had met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Russia's St. Petersburg. A press release later issued by the Indian Foreign Ministry said that the two officials had discussed outstanding issues along the LAC. Now, it is again Russia where PM Modi and Xi Jinping are expected to meet. So we can say that the three big powers of BRICS are now coming together. They have just resolved their biggest crisis, and that is a nightmare for the West. The three superpowers have realized that the Western hegemony cannot be dismantled until and unless these bilateral conflicts are resolved first. Every year, both China and India spend billions of dollars to boost their military preparedness on the LAC. With increased mutual understanding, the resources can be put to better use on both sides. India and China are the world's two largest armies. If Russian forces are also taken into account, the three powers can make for a formidable military alliance. If Russia's advanced tech, China's economic might, and India's manpower resources are put together, no alliance in the world would dare to play around with BRICS bloc.
Move. Dr. Joseph Chalil, does America really have any levers on us left? I remember that when they put the pressure, they said that they will impose sanctions on us when we were going ahead with the S-400 missile defense system purchase. They threatened, but the sanctions were placed not as an India-specific favor, but were rolled out by the US. So they threatened, right? But our purchase still went through. The Americans had to deal with the fact that we are not going to listen to them beyond the point. Now we are not only not listening to them, but we've made it clear that we will continue to have a strong affinity with the BRICS nations, with Russia. And we're also solving our issues with China in a very deliberate move. How will Washington respond to this?
The deep south, the deep state in America should be really worried, because I think the biggest threat to their power is this, especially the Russia-China alliance. And if India comes into that picture, it will be, it won't be under control. But from all what we see here, the likelihood that there'll be a Trump presidency coming in, then it might be a welcome move. It might be a group of friends and global peace and possibly long-term peace forever. Maybe this might be the only way we can avoid a World War III, where Russia and China and America and India together are speaking us as equals, as partners, not as adversaries, not as America controlling the deep state telling India or Russia or China this is what they should do, versus respected for their right place in the history, right place to bring peace to the world. So again, China has the money more than America have at this point. Russia has all the natural resources. India has the manpower. This three-party combination would be a force to reckon with. I hope and pray that the deep state of America get to know this and then play their card wisely, and they respect India and bring peace to Ukraine and Russia as soon as possible. This is what Donald Trump has promised. He said as soon as before he even takes office, that he would force peace upon Russia-Ukraine or Ukraine war. So I assume that's what's going to happen. I think this is a great day for India. India is being respected. I think the long-standing, territorial war between China and India need to be settled. That would be good for our security as well. But again, I wouldn't trust China with all my heart, and I wouldn't trust Russia with China as well. So that's that we are, in the group as opposed to outside.
But I think our policy right now is trust nobody from an Indian perspective, but be ready to work with all. be ready to be reasonable with all. And viewers, just remember, it's not easy to do this. All of this is happening at a time. Sergey, I want to go to you next. How do you view it in Russia? I saw Russia today, non-stop coverage of this. A lot of focus on Prime Minister Modi, while there being a great focus on Brics. So obviously your state machinery looks upon today's event and tomorrow's event as an end of American attempts to isolate Russia. How important a role does India play in this?
Thank you so much, dear and honorable Arnab Goswamiji, for invitation. I want to tell that most significance that right now it's the first time that new format of BRICS. Before it was only 5 countries. Right now, 5 new members joined to BRICS, and 4 of these new members belong to the Muslim world. That's why our national leader, Vladimir Putin, especially chose Kazan like a capital of Tatarstan, most biggest Muslim republic in our country, to be a capital of BRICS conversation. And the most important, of course, is agenda, and agenda related to the coexistence and interdependence, like a main principle of BRICS Intergovernmental Alliance. Because we are not living in independent world where it depends from Mother Earth, from nature, from God, from each other. And we should bring some spiritual principles for our discussion. Criterion of progress, it's not only economical level and some economical level of the society, but also spiritual progress. We can tell how educated people, how they're soft heart. That should be also, we should bring to agenda. And I want just remind that the last day of BRICS will be birthday of United Nations. 79 years back, we installed United Nations without basic word in our document of United Nations, without word God and God will. That's why right now Russia is not any more atheistic country. We are believers like India. India believes to Sanatana Dharma, we also believe to Jesus Christ, and we have with us Muslim populations. That's why our spiritual mission is dialogue of civilization. That's why BRICS is a future, because of this main principle, means interdependence. What we want to discuss, that is most important.
Our own Texas Rose was briefly banished by the tyranny of big tech. But we and all her friends around the world rallied the public in her support, and she was reinstated. And I'm particularly glad to welcome back to the mother of all talk shows, our very own Rachel Blevins. Rachel, it's a joy to see you re-established in the places that sought to banish you, but in truth, you've never gone away. It's always possible to follow your work, and my goodness, it's increasingly important to do so. How are you, and how did you pull it off to get back on YouTube?
Well, thank you, George. I'm happy to be here back on this show. And yes, also back on YouTube. It was interesting. I know YouTube kind of goes through these phases. Will purge multiple different accounts. I was seeing that in recent weeks. We had, Mark Sloboda, DD Geopolitics, Professor Glenn Deason, all of these commentators who specifically talk about Ukraine and also Russia and who don't buy the Western narrative on it. They were having their pages wiped off of YouTube. And I was getting targeted with YouTube taking down 4 videos on my channel, claiming that they all had hate speech in them. Now, obviously, I go and I look at these videos. I'm wondering, okay, if you're saying that there's hate speech, then what does that mean? Is that in any of these videos? I still don't believe that it was. I did think it was notable that all of those videos, though, were also about Ukraine and Russia. So even as we're in this time right now where there is so much going on in the world, I mean, we're keeping an eye on the Middle East, wondering when Israel is going to attack Iran, if that leads to World War III, you still have YouTube over here going after the quote unquote misinformation and hate speech it claims that it's finding on Ukraine. So my channel was taken down completely on a Sunday. And the first thing I do is I go to X, I post about it, and people like yourself were raising the rallying cry, calling out YouTube all around. And I have never seen such a show of support. So many people reaching out to me saying that they were contacting YouTube. And then by Tuesday afternoon, I get this email from YouTube saying, hey, basically, are bad in a way, although they don't really come out and say that, but they say, we understand that your channel is very important to you and your audience, and we have chosen to reinstate it. However, they did include a warning on it, which yes, they did still. So I do still have a warning on my channel claiming that they did still find hate speech in those 4 videos that were about Ukraine and Russia. So something to kind of keep an eye on. I'm still being careful with the videos that I post there. But of course, as you were noting, there are plenty of places on the internet to be able to post content. And so every alternative platform, I am there. I'm still posting the same content. I haven't changed anything about what I'm saying or speaking out about, or, you know, what issues I'm covering. It's just we're kind of treading lightly on the YouTube for a little bit until they finally take that warning off my account.
Well, look, if it's any consolation, the day will come, and because you're young, you definitely will see it, when everyone will be claiming that they took your point of view on the NATO-Russia war in Ukraine. If I tell you that when I was the leading force opposing the British and American invasion of Iraq, it was quite a lonely wicket. It was a source of quite some considerable career damage, even physical health damage, damage to one's status and standing. One was treated as bad or mad or both. But within a couple of years, certainly within 5 years, you could not find anybody who would continue to say that the Anglo-American invasion of Iraq had been a good idea. And within 5 years, I would turn up for university debates on the subject when no speaker for the other side could be found. And the same will be true of this Russia, Ukraine, NATO business. And it may come very quickly, Rachel, because if I'm right and Donald Trump wins the election in just 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks from now, he will stop the Ukraine war. At least he'll stop America's endless and very, very expensive support for the Zelensky regime. He'll pull the plug on the whole operation. And by the time February comes and the inauguration, it might very well be that this war is over. What's your take?
Oh, I may be a bit more cynical than you, and I do appreciate you bringing up the history there. I know that, you know, you have quite the legacy of being on the right side of history and standing up for the people. And it's crazy to think now, you're right, that people were ever back there cheering for the Iraq war, cheering for the killing of over 1 million Iraqis. And yet those people, when you look at all of the war criminals from the US to the UK, they're not behind bars, right? They haven't faced any sort of meaningful accountability. They're still walking free. You've got, you know, George W. Bush, who is now some sort of reformed artist, and he's celebrated by the media. And it's incredibly concerning to me to look at the way that those war criminals are treated, because it shows that for today's versions, right, for Joe Biden and Antony Blinken and Lloyd Austin, that they're looking back and they're going, well, there was never any accountability for them, so why should I have to worry about there being any accountability for me? Now, when it comes to Trump, now I'm with you. I do think that despite these these polls saying that things are neck and neck between him and Harris. I think he has a significant edge, and that we are going to see that come election day. As long as everything is free and fair here in this country, I think that you're going to see a significant push for Trump in the votes. Now, my biggest concern about him is the fact that in the same way before his first campaign, there were so many things he actually campaigned on, but then when he gets into office, he surrounded himself with these same swamp creatures that he said that he was going to get rid of. So I do think he's learned some things. I do think that he has some significant people around him, specifically on the issue of Ukraine. You know, you have his running mate, J.D. Vance, even his son, Donald Trump Jr., who have been very outspoken about Ukraine, about Zelensky, and the fact that he is a little dictator who's stealing plenty of US money. And so I think there is some hope there, but my biggest concern is going to be how he decides to handle things if he gets back into office for that second term. And you also have the question of how Russia is going to handle things, because as we know, Vladimir Putin has been very clear with his list of demands, saying this is what is required for us to even hold peace talks. Now, he could make some changes on that, right? If there is a Trump that comes into office that is willing to work with him, there could be some possible back and forth there. But I think my biggest concern is that Russia, well, not necessarily concern, I should say, but the biggest thing to note is that Russia has learned from recent years how the West operates. They've learned from the Minsk agreements, from the Istanbul talks of last year, that the West may say that they want peace. They may say, okay, we're going to sort out things for now, but then they use that time to continue to arm the crazy extremist neo-Nazis in Ukraine. And so Russia's looking at this going, hey, we may get 4 years of Trump, but the concern for them, I'm going to think, would be whether we come to an agreement now, whether Trump is able to continue on everything that he says he wants to do regarding Ukraine. So definitely a lot of moving parts there, but I will say I would be encouraged if Trump does stick to what he's campaigning on when it comes to support for Kiev.
Well, I think he may not stick to what he's doing on everything else, but I'm sure that he will stick to it on Ukraine for a number of reasons. Perhaps the overarching one being he knows that the Democrats are up to their neck in corruption in Ukraine, and he can take out a number of very big Democratic names out of politics forever, whose family members are sucking at the teat of a Ukrainian exchequer itself bloated by the taxpayers' dollars of the United States, Britain, the European Union, and so on. I think he knows that there are very dark secrets for the Democrats in Kiev, Hunter Biden only being a lightweight amongst them. So I think that a new President Trump with a second term will definitely pull the plug on Zelensky. I think he despises Zelensky. I think he thinks that Zelensky has done everything he could to try and damage him. One of Zelensky's supporters may well have been trying to assassinate him on the golf course in Florida. I think if there's one issue that Trump will be faithful on, it is Ukraine. But what about the others? Rachel, I'm sorry to put it this way, but we might not see out the end of the week before Netanyahu unleashes what will become the mother of all wars right across the whole region, from the Levant to the Persian Gulf, and maybe even to the Atlantic. The whole balloon might go up. If these leaks from Washington are correct, then Netanyahu has been given a green light by Washington to do whatever it is he wants to do.
Oh, absolutely. And it is extremely concerning. I was actually looking at those classified documents that were leaked earlier. And the most fascinating part to me is that the US has presented these documents as if saying, hey, we kind of took a look at Israel. This is what it looks like they're poised to do based on all of their military setup. this is where things are pointed when it comes to Iran. And according to reports, you got these documents marked so that they are only supposed to be seen by other Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance members. So this is the US giving their friends kind of a heads up of this is what Israel is going to do when it comes to Iran. And then the biggest part, I would say, from these documents is the acknowledgement that Israel has nuclear weapons. Now, we all know that, right? It's something that we can talk about and it not be referred to as some kind of conspiracy theory. But here in the United States, the US is actively violating its own law by continuing to give Israel billions upon billions of dollars of military aid every single year, knowing that Israel is not party to any nuclear treaties. They don't have any inspections of their sites and of the weapons that they have in their power. And also knowing the fact that when Israel began its genocidal war targeting the Palestinians last year, you had Israeli officials who were openly talking about wanting to use nuclear weapons on Gaza. That's not something that was just kind of whispered about. That was something that was actually suggested as a strategy. And this entire time, the US has refused to do anything. They've continued to play dumb. They know exactly what is at stake. If Israel does choose to attack Iran, Iran then chooses to retaliate once again, because we have to remember that even though the mainstream media is claiming, oh, Israel is just planning its retaliatory attack, the reality is that Iran's last attack, that was legitimate retaliation. Now you have Israel escalating things once again. And the fact that the US refuses to rein them in whatsoever is a reminder that the US is not only enabling this genocidal war that is now expanding into a regional war, but they have been complicit in every single crime. And for every time that the US refuses to speak out, it's a reminder that they approve of everything Israel's doing. And I think that that's something that needs to be in the minds of every individual in the West as they are watching their governments really start World War III, at least in this part of the world.
Rachel Blevins still in fighting fine form.
Which did reach and did attack the weekend residence of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Was this an attempt to assassinate him or just send a message? We can find you if we want.
I think it was more sending a message. Hey, we know where you live. We can come visit anytime. And they certainly were able to get at least one drone there. And reportedly, one of the drones actually flew through a particular window. If that was the bathroom or the bedroom, I think Netanyahu got the message.
Well, what do these drones do? I mean, are they packed with explosives? Are they surveillance drones only?
No, you can. You've got a variety. You can't really pack them with explosives because it's only the more expensive ones like the Predator drones, where you can put on heavy, fairly heavy armament. But you can put an explosive device, like a mortar shell, for example, a small one, on the front of these, and when they collide, it'll detonate. This has been the real, if you will, revolution in war that has taken place as a result of Russia's special military operation in Ukraine over the last 2.5 years. This has really changed the game because you haven't seen this anywhere in the world on the battlefield like it is now. Prior to February 2022, drone warfare was one of the big drones, like the Predators, flying above and then keeping an eye on somebody and then hitting them with a HARM missile. So there was targeted assassination that way. But now it's, hey, everybody can do it. I've said before, I'm just waiting for the day when someone puts up a drone swarm to be sucked into the engines of an aircraft of some world leader and to bring him down. That's going to happen. It's just, I'm sort of surprised it hasn't happened yet.
Very interesting, Larry. And again, before we get to the Telegram leak, what is your take on the military or political significance of the assassination of Sinwar?
I had written before I heard Alistair Crook this morning the same thing, that this was going to create a hero. I likened it in the piece I wrote to when the Jews fought the Romans at the Battle of Masada. All of the Jews ended up dying, and are they forgotten? Is that an event that Israel looks back on and say, "Boy, I wish that never happened"? No, it's celebrated as a heroic struggle. And that's the same, and ditto for the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto fighting against the Nazis. Again, they are remembered as heroes, even though they were outgunned, outnumbered. It was, a true David versus Goliath situation in that. Well, it's the same thing for Sinwar. They have elevated and made him a hero. He wasn't sitting behind a desk smoking a cigar. He was out on the front lines of the battlefield, and he wasn't cowering, and he wasn't pleading for his life. He was fighting, and that sends a message. It really does resonate.
Here's somebody that agrees with you fully. The president of Turkey, cut number 3.
After my brother Ismail Haniyeh, the last elected prime minister of Palestine, I also pray to God to have mercy on Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, who was martyred recently. Today, I once again salute, with respect to all the leaders and members of the Palestinian resistance, who became legendary not only with exemplary struggle, but also with their martyrdom, and the heroes who watered the lands of Gaza with their blessed blood.
Well, this is exactly what you were saying. Of course, the United States government has an entirely different view. Even though we're talking about the death of a human being, this is so absurd, it's almost comedic. Here's Matt Miller, the State Department spokesperson, on Thursday, cut number 2.
Hamas and other terrorist groups will try to present Sinwar as some kind of hero for the Palestinian cause. But I think it's important that everyone remember the actual facts, which is that Sinwar was a brutal terrorist that didn't just terrorize the Israeli people, but that ruled Gaza with an iron fist before October 7th, that brutalized Palestinians in Gaza, that tortured Palestinians in Gaza, and then unleashed a conflict that has been responsible for the death of more than 40,000 Palestinians. So I would hope that anyone that's considering thinking of him in any favorable light at all will look on the actual consequences of his life and the decisions that he made that wreaked such havoc for the Palestinian people.
I guess that's what Joe Biden thinks, if he thinks anything about this.
Well, there's a bright side to what Miller said. The U.S. government has admitted that Israel's killed 40,000 Palestinians. Now, they're trying to blame that on Sinwar. Sinwar's not out there shooting the Palestinians and bombing the Palestinians and blowing up tents and setting them on fire. That's the Israelis. And up to this point, the U.S. government has maintained, those are grossly exaggerated numbers. Those are Palestinian numbers. Those aren't the real numbers. Hey, now they accept them.
Yeah,
great.
Either a recognition of reality or a slip of the tongue on his part.
Yeah. Right. These guys think they're so smart, and they're such a bunch of morons, imbeciles. I mean, it's disgusting.
It's the type of, if that job draws people like that, look at Admiral Kirby. I don't know what kind of an admiral he was when he was full-time Navy, but he is almost universally regarded as a fool today.
Yeah, he'd had trouble launching a rubber duck in a bathtub.
Larry, your own post was about the most lucid explanation of the significance of these 2 documents that were leaked. Tell us what they were and how you view this.
Yeah, so these two documents popped up, was it Friday night on the Middle East Spectator. And so, when I saw them, I'm initially a little skeptical. One was classified as top secret TK FGI ISR / RSAN / no form. And the other was classified secret. It was a brief. The second one was basically an assessment of Israeli readiness to launch a strike. And the information contained in that I thought was reassuring, because basically it said that Israel's, even though they were seen making preparations to try to do something, they're going through the kind of planning and exercise that you normally would expect to see. It was not at a level of intensity and urgency that would suggest that they were getting ready to do something within the next day or two. But the first document is a piece of, it's sort of what I call a classic intelligence report based upon satellite data, imagery, and signals intercept. So when you're talking about information gathered by satellites and information gathered through intercepted communications, that's the most sensitive information in the world. So that whole document with this classification, no foreign, means you don't share it with foreigners. Share it with Israel? Nope. Foreigners, even though we sometimes act as if they are Americans. So that means nobody gets to see it. However, when you go down further, there's a title, report summary. And the report summary then has a sort of a different level of classification. So what that tells you is from that point on, everything below follows that particular classification.
Larry, let me just stop you. I thought we shared everything with the Five Eyes.
Well, I bet you the Five Eyes thought that was the case too. That's where this document goes, whoops. Because it's not so much the information that's in the document, it's the fact that when you look at paragraphs, the classification report summary says FVEY, Five Eye. That's how the security bureaucrats pronounce that. Five Eyes stands for United States, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the five. And they're supposed to, they got together and they share information. Well, there are 5 paragraphs in this report. Paragraphs, if I remember correctly, 1, 3, and 5 are shared with the Five Eyes. Paragraph 2, however, is no foreign. It's not shared with any of the Five Eyes because it comes from what they call a foreign government intelligence. That's what FGI means. That's not some type secret classification that's written into publicly available DoD manuals. And then paragraph 4 is classified so it's releasable only to USA and Great Britain. Now imagine you're the Canadians or the Aussies or the Kiwis, and you're going, "Hey, wait a minute. Why aren't they sharing that with me?"
They didn't do this on purpose.
And then this now is providing clear proof that the United States is picking and choosing what it's going to share with each of its Five Eye partners.
Would that be startling to MI6 and the other intelligence communities of those other supposedly allied countries?
Well, it shouldn't. Let me put it this way. If it's startling, they're dumber than I thought they were, because they should anticipate and expect that the United States is going to lie to you. The first lesson I was taught at CIA was there's no such thing as a friendly intelligence organization. Yeah, but what about the Brits? Repeat. There's no such thing as a friendly intelligence agency. But Israel, there is no such thing as a friendly intelligence agency, okay?
Got it.
So we have alliances with people that we get along with, but it doesn't mean we share everything with them at all. And guess what? They do the same to us. So we think, oh yeah, you're a best friend, and they're not sharing. That's just, that's what I call the grown-up world of intelligence.
Does this revelation of what we share with whom impair our relationships with the remaining four eyes?
Sure. Yeah, it's gonna create some problems, some turmoil, some distrust beyond what already exists. So I think this is one of the unanticipated consequences of putting this out. If I'm a Russian or a Chinese intelligence analyst, man, I'm having a good time going over this, because it both allows you as a Russian or Chinese intelligence analyst to compare what you have with what the Americans have, because the notion that the United States is the only country in the world with satellites that can fly over those military bases in Israel and take photographs and collect information is ludicrous. Russians have it, Chinese have it. I suspect the Indians probably have it as well. So you should always, if you're the commander of that base, you should expect somebody's collecting information. That's why you do try to take steps to disguise your activities or hide them best you can. But we live now in an era where it's virtually impossible to hide anything because of the tremendous ISR capabilities that have developed over the last 20 years.
ISR is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Let me ask you the flip side of the question about our relationship with the four remaining eyes. How, if at all, does this impair the relationship between CIA and Defense Intelligence Agency and Mossad and IDF? Or are we so intertwined with them that it won't impair that relationship at all?
Well, I think it's going to create some obstacles potentially for, that's called liaison. And, a significant amount of U.S. intelligence over the last 20 years, if you compare the last 20 years to the preceding 30 years, the last 20 years have relied more and more upon liaison reporting, particularly on the human side. That means information.
What does that mean, Larry?
That means intelligence that you get from the Brits, from the Israelis, from the Germans, whoever. They give you the intelligence that they've collected, then we pass it off and report it as human intelligence, but acknowledging that it is from a foreign source. It's liaison. So I think it's more the real question we ought to be looking at, though, is the purpose of this leak. Because initially I withheld judgment, but based upon the reaction, the growing hysterical reaction in Washington, D.C., I think is absolutely legitimate. And the purpose was very simple: stop Israel from attacking Iran. Put it out there.
Who is the likely leaker? Not the person, but what does the person do for a living? How many people would have had lawful, legitimate access to this document? How many human beings?
Yeah, this was not some low-level snuffy like Bradley, Chelsea Manning. It was this is someone who is at a senior level. I think it's highly unlikely that an analyst like me, sitting at the CIA, who had this come across their desk, would want to take the risk of getting up and getting that information out, particularly to the Middle East spectator. This, I think, this came from an official source. And what do I mean by official source? You got an official like a Blinken, like a Sullivan, somebody that works for them, that are very frustrated that Israel is ignoring the U.S. pleas to not escalate, to not strike Iran because they fear the consequences. And yet they can't correctly and leak it to the Washington Post or the New York Times. That'd be too obvious. So you use a cutout. And then in this case, the cutout was the Middle East Spectator. That way it looks like it was maybe the Iranians, because the Middle East Spectator does have a relationship with Iran, or at least an alleged relationship with Iran.
How,
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Larry, please.
No. So I'm saying in getting it out there, regardless of whether it was a whistleblower, and I think you can make a case, as Ray has effectively, suggesting that it could be a whistleblower, or that this was, if you will, an unofficial official act of the U.S. government trying to sabotage Israel's ability to move forward.
I guess we'll learn if it came from a high-ranking U.S. official for policy reasons, if no one is prosecuted. I mean, Ray says maybe 300 human beings had access to these documents. Do you agree with that number, or do you think it's more or less?
I don't know. My guess would be it's more. Let's put it this way: if Ray is correct that say only 300 had access to it, then the FBI is going to have a pretty easy time of tracking down and gathering. They get to spy on all these people. They get to pull the phone records and email records.
How much of a setback is this for Israel? And why is Prime Minister Netanyahu, as you described him earlier, as have your colleagues on this show, livid?
Well, number one, it makes it quite clear that Israel is involved in preparation and identifies particular kinds of weapon systems that are going to be used and how they would be used. But I think we should avoid assigning too much importance to these documents in terms of what they reveal about Israel's state of operations. Because the message I took away after reading them, both of them, was all this prediction that Israel's going to do it today, it's going to do it tomorrow, it's any day now. No, it's not any day now. They're not. You don't see them rushing around. You don't see them assembling and massing force. They seem to be taking their time. Well, China and Russia have the same information. I mean, to believe that they don't, I think, is foolish. Do you think China and Russia are sharing it with Iran? Absolutely. But what this does is Iran, the Russians, and the Chinese intelligence services are now able to compare what their assessment was with what the U.S. assessment is, and say, okay, this is where we agree, this is where we disagree. That kind of information becomes very important, as well as helping to identify the kinds of weapon systems and missile defense systems that you're going to want to have in place to defeat these air-launched ballistic missiles. Because Israel's going to launch those. They're not going to fly into Iran and launch them inside Iran. They'll make that aircraft very vulnerable. They'll get up outside of Iran to fire them. But again, then that gives the Iranians a leg up in preparing defenses.
Could this be part of an Israeli-American plot to mislead the Iranians, or do you think this is a real, legitimate breach of serious Israeli planning, now a setback for the Israelis?
Yeah, no, I think it's legit. Just again, from nothing else, the fact that you got a paragraph of the intel where there's only sharing it with the U.S. and the Brits, and the other three members of the Five Eyes group are shut out, and that's going to create some problems. I don't think you would deliberately create. It's like say, hey, I'm gonna fake that I'm cheating on my wife, but as part of cheating on my wife, I'm gonna take a photograph of myself in bed with. Wait a second, that doesn't fly too well. So yeah, I think this message was damaging, because that second paragraph is based on foreign government intelligence, ISR, which is the foreign government.
Wow.
Was that Israel that shared that information with the United States and the United States put it out? Or was it some other foreign government that shared it? Regardless, that I think it's that second paragraph that's got Israel so miffed, because it talks specifically about two particular weapon systems, one of which, initially I couldn't find any reference on throughout the internet to it. It was called Golden Horizon. Now someone else has suggested it's supposed to be Golden Dawn, but the point is it got written into that intelligence piece as Golden Horizon. So that initially raised my suspicion that it could be a fabrication, but since then, no.
Let's switch gears, Larry, before we conclude. How desperate is Ukraine at this moment, mid to late October 2024?
It's getting darker every day. So videos have surfaced out of Kursk, for example, where you see a line of about 100 Ukrainian soldiers fleeing across the field, and some are getting hit with drones as they're running away. The point is, they don't have vehicles, they don't have tanks, they don't have armored personnel characters. They're having to bug out on foot, and then across that main line of combat that stretches about 900 miles north to south. The Russians are advancing rapidly. There was a hilarious troll done by the Russians today. So they took this one area, and normally they'll hoist their flag. Well, they hoisted their flag and a North Korean flag. Now, it was there weren't any North Koreans there, but it just, oh my gosh, it set off the Ukrainians. See, the North Koreans, they're there.
We've all been predicting that North Korea has been in its last legs for a while. Do you believe this time is true? It's not going to collapse before Election Day, but is it going to make it until Christmas?
You mean Ukraine? Is Ukraine going to make it to Christmas?
Ukraine. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. They may hold out, because I've been wrong in the past trying to set a date on when they'll collapse. All we can see, though, is more and more senior Ukrainian officials are coming out and admitting that they don't have enough manpower. That's the problem, the lack of manpower. And then on top of it, you had General Zaluzhny, now Ukraine's ambassador to the United Kingdom. He's saying that, hey, we need to be ready to make some concessions on territory in order to bring an end to the fighting. Now, that has been a non-negotiable position for Zelensky as recently as 2 days ago. But now, here's Zaluzhny, who enjoys more popular support. So I think one thing we could be seeing is the beginnings of they're going to replace Zelensky with Zaluzhny, and he might be in a position to actually negotiate with the Russians.
Interesting observations. Thank you, Larry. Thanks very much for your time. Please get back to us.
Kofi, follow me.